Hello everyone. Today, I find myself in an unfortunate position, and I gotta deliver you the bad news. I have been kicked from the Philosophers Club. It never really was my style, to be honest. Too many terms, too many thought processes. I even had to debate people and form coherent arguments. I couldn't even breathe in there. Stoicism, utilitarianism, psychoanalytical methodologies, analyzing fiction, Bible studies. I even ran out of protein powder. Too much work. Too much work. I need something more digestible to help me sound more knowledgeable on the internet. Even though I'm not. If only such a quote-unquote realm of science existed. Wait, what is this? A forbidden book, a tome of ancient knowledge, coming from the high ones. Tell me, O benevolent sources of wisdom, where should I turn my attention to all the barely educated masses on the internet? Bread on YouTube.
I have always said, the only enlightenment in religion is a burning temple at night.
Bread tube. Yes, I understand. Bread tube. Thank you, O knowledgeable spirits in all things unknowledgeable. I now know what I must do. See? I told you I didn't learn my lesson since the Enderal video. Nehrim then. To an outsider, Nehrim might simply appear as the outdated, weird-looking shadow behind Enderal, which is one of the best mods that were ever made, as in ever, across all gaming. And don't get me wrong, it is exactly that, but just because it's not as good as what many would argue is the best mod ever, it doesn't mean that it's not good. Nehrim is the biggest mod ever made for Oblivion. It is a complete conversion mod, with a new world, hundreds of dungeons, large cities, new settings, systems, and easily at least 100 hours of gameplay. It is also entirely in German, which is why, among other reasons, no one bothers to actually cover it. Don't worry though, where others see World War II flashbacks, I see an opportunity. So with the help of a mod that uses AI voices to voice act everything in Nehrim, I have been able to experience Nehrim for myself, and I will now convey my thoughts about it in this video. And after way too much time spent on the game, I have come to the conclusion that Nehrim is to Oblivion what Enderal is to Skyrim. The biggest difference between the two total conversion mods is, in my opinion, that Nehrim is a lot better in creating rewarding questless exploration and improving Oblivion systems and mechanics, whereas Enderal has the better story out of the two. And as I am making this introduction, I'm trying to compose my thoughts because we have a lot to talk about and I want to make sure that everything is set in the right order. But if anything else, please play this game if you are able to before watching this video. And I use the magic words able to for a few reasons. Modern people tend not to have 70 hours sitting around, so I will try to give you the full experience through this bloated YouTube video. There is, however, another factor that might prevent someone from actually playing this game. This mod is about 15 years old. This game was not made nor optimized for modern systems. Moreover, it was not made for modern software, and it was most definitely not made with the intention of being modded. So as a result of these factors, this game crashes a lot. The amount of times I have crashed while playing this game is in the realm of triple digits. The footage for this video is gonna look slightly off sometimes. A few minor lags every now and again, a few areas not loading right. I was gonna mention when the game crashes as we go along, but it crashes so much that I have completely given up on this idea. So to not bring this up again, the game can crash at any given time. However, it crashes more frequently in the city of Erothin, the town of Ostian, several times during the Ostian questline, several times during the main quest, more frequently towards the end of the main quest, during certain side quests, outside the abbey, in outdoor locations, while teleporting, while getting out of a dungeon, while exploring the overworld, and while attempting to save the actual game, which you would think that would cause you to save less, but given that saving is a player's only weapon against the insistent crashing, it ultimately means that you will be saving a lot more. I have no more than 70 hours into this game, and I have saved more than 2,000 times, which is just a little less than the amount of times I have saved in Skyrim Legendary Edition, which might sound fair on the surface, but I was playing Skyrim Special Edition for more than 1,000 hours, so it doesn't even compare. If you have, by some tech miracle or simply by being lucky enough, made this game not crash for you, then I envy you. I am 100% confident that this game has caused permanent damage to my setup, but the need for content prevails. Other technical issues include, but are not limited to, refusal to launch the game, inability to access saves that got corrupted, eternal loading screens, blockhead. The whole crew is here. In fact, the reason why this video took so long to make was because around 5 hours of gameplay in, Nehrim decided to go Lamau XD and it just stopped working. It didn't want to boot up. My first thought after checking the files was to say, okay, maybe the files got corrupted. Time for a verification of game files integrity. Do not do that. Under any circumstance, do not verify file integrity. What was I even expecting? That they would go, okay bro, we fixed this Jenga puzzle of a mod folder you've got going on, and from then on, the game wouldn't open for good this time. I found nothing to help me with this issue, clearly because no one else is as dumb as me, so my genius brain came up with the following idea. Uninstall both Nehrim and Oblivion, install them again, starting with Nehrim and then Oblivion, and then boot up Oblivion, at which point, I was met with this. I don't even know how you get a menu screen to look like this. This is how the menu screen is supposed to look. And from that point onward, it worked just fine. So I guess the moral of the story here is break it until you fix it. And I am saying all this because this game has me divided more than any other game I have played so far about whether I should recommend it or not. With something like Elder Scrolls Redguard, I can treat it like a fragment of the past and just tell people not to play it because it isn't worth it. But Nehrim is actually good. It's just not optimized for modern systems. Many of you won't even be able to play it if you're playing it on anything that isn't Windows 7, 8 or 10. Okay, now that I have sufficiently vented about my modding misfortunes, let's give some disclaimers. For one, I will explain this game with the presumption that everyone here is caught up with the events of Enderal, since Enderal is heavily foreshadowed throughout the course of this game, and because it's also like 10 times more popular than Nehrim. It's not that I won't explain when something complicated from Enderal shows up, but I feel like people won't appreciate the full detail of Nehrim if they don't know about Enderal first. I will also have to explain Archdwent, the mod that predates both of them, when the time is right. That being said, Enderal is considered a soft reboot of Nehrim and Archdwent, and I think that the main reason why that is because 1. The mods needed more identity to be distinguished from other generic fantasy garble stories, and 2, and I will touch more on this later, magic in this game is broken. Conceptually, Enderal created such a beautiful lore around magic and parallel realities where mages are able to cast forth those realities into their own ones at the cost of arcane fever and madness and possibly becoming an Urbaya and having to use ambrosia and so many amazing concepts around magic. None of those concepts exist in Nehrim. In Nehrim, magic is simply a thing that exists in the world, and some people have access to it from birth at random, unless you're an Eterna, who are all born with the ability to cast magic. And its power is potentially unlimited. You can teleport, you can destroy cities, you can throw comets at people, you can become immortal, you can brainwash people, you can basically do whatever without even the cost of developing arcane fever, which isn't a thing yet. There will be times where magic becomes such an obvious plot hole that it completely takes away from the game. Anytime you see a powerful mage about to die, just know that that mage had 100% of the power to just teleport out of any situation. Anytime you see two mages battling each other, just know that nothing is stopping them from throwing comets at each other. Other than the usual, it only works this way when it fits the plot. Magic isn't the only thing that got a makeover, by the way, but I will talk about the other things when we get to those sections. Finally, I would like to say that a lot of the things that I'm gonna be saying in this video, especially as we talk about Nehrim and its relationship with Archdwent and Enderal, are gonna be my theories. I'll make it clear when something is my theory, and I would like to say that a lot of different topics about these mods are highly cryptic and left unexplained, so we can piece together the puzzle ourselves. This also comes into conflict with the fact that some things were lost in translation, which includes grammar, and other things get lost in inconsistencies in writing in between games or differences because of the reboot. I will also make sure to point out when something is escaping the realm of mystery and approaching the realm of confused writing. Looking at you, Callisto and Arced. And with all that being said, plus a spoiler warning, let's talk about the biggest, most ambitious Oblivion mod ever made. Nehrim, at Fate's Edge. World building time! The world of Ven, according to Nehrim that is, there are a lot of books in this game that talk about the beginning of the world. Oh, did I also mention that this game also goes by the unreliable narrator trope? Now if I had a dime, let me tell ya, According to the in-game book, Appearance and Existence, the world developed as follows. There was an eternal nothingness, and that eternal nothingness was shattered by a big explosion, and beings were created from light and from darkness as a result of this explosion. And these creatures inhabited both of them. Some creatures existed in the darkness, and others existed in the light. And these creatures created the world, including the planet Ven, which is the planet that these games take place in. The light creatures would then reveal themselves to the humans and the gods, aka the Lightborn, who aren't really gods and are more so OP mages who branded themselves as gods, but they will neither directly interfere with the world, nor its predestination, nor the cycle. If anything, throughout the story, some of these beings seem to be the guardians of these concepts, whereas the dark creatures would always keep the world moving by influencing the minds of the people and by creating emotions such as hatred and disharmony. These dark creatures, because they always remain hidden, had no name, but the light creatures would come to be known as the Eliath. These Eliath are interested only in creating the framework of the world and watching people live in it, as if they are the creators of a cosmic game, though what they are hoping to get from creating the world and not interfering in it isn't clear to us yet. Parenthesis, predestination refers to the events that must happen within a cycle and are inevitable. Supposedly, these acts are carved into the fabric of existence, they are written down in a book of unknown origins which we will encounter later, and their completion signals the beginning, the end, or a step forward into the cycle. The cycle, on the other hand, is the entirety of human existence. In short, life comes up out of nowhere, there is a brief period of stability, said prosperity crumbles, like the toppings of my favorite apple pie, a dark age commences, characterized by violence and instability, a theocracy arises, a shadow god is then born who kills the rulers of the theocracy, and then the shadow god too must die, in order for the next stage of the cycle to begin. And I have to note this, no one in Nehrim knows the full extent of the cycle. The High Ones, the Beacon, the Emissaries, or even the Veiled Woman. They know only up to the point where the Shadow God rises, kills the Lightborn, and then he too must die. However, just because these concepts are known to the protagonists of Nehrim doesn't mean that they don't exist in the world and shape it in one way or another. In Enderal, there are a lot of quests that hint that something exists within the sea, like the quest about the Brotherhood of Khorne. And since we touched on the deities of Enderal, I want to say that I don't think that the Veiled Woman is one of those creatures made out of either darkness or light. It is probably the creator of everything, which includes those creatures. It is a demiurge, an incompetent god that created a flawed world with the hopes that one day the creatures it created will be able to overcome it. At least that's my theory, and I base this theory based on what we actually see of it, the Brotherhood of Khorne questline, and the admissions of the main writer of the game, who has stated that a lot of the game is based off of Gnosticism. Alright, so we have this world where humans spawn every cycle and have to do certain things, and also in this world we have some creatures that guide them and watch them from afar. So as of the time of Nehrim, what is happening in this cycle? Well, in the book, The First War, The Creator and Destiny, we learn about the distant past of Vin and the starting stages of this cycle. According to it, Asatron, also referred to as Asadaron, was an almighty mage and emperor who was serving predestination across the galaxy with his alien race of subjects, the Eterna. However, in time, Asatron lost his faith in predestination, and he instead decided to wipe out the world in an attempt to save it from the endless puppet game it was stuck in. His wife Sarantha rebelled against her husband, and she, along with the help of other rebelling Eterna and the Star People, another race of super technologically advanced aliens, clashed with Asatron and his forces on the planet of Ven. The fallout of the starships of the Eterna and the Star People split the world of Ven from one huge continent to other smaller continents, and from that point on, the Eterna and the Star People will be stuck on Ven, with the Star People constantly trying to make advances in science and technology, hoping to, one day, hopefully reach their home planet again. Asatron was defeated in the battle and was trapped outside time and space, while Sarantha, his rebelled wife, was taken away by the light beings, the Eliaths, and became something more, as the book puts it. I want to say, with all my heart and soul, that this book is overshadowed by the retcon, or is just flat out false. It is such a weird mix of fact and metaphor. It mentions that the Lightborn were the creators of the natural order, which they weren't. It mentions that the first war happened eons ago, which it didn't, it happened 8,000 years ago. And obviously, the story of the Star People is way different than what is presented here. However, Sarantha is real, Asatron and the Reign of the Eterna are also real, and they were described as the first stage of the cycle, the stage of prosperity. Overall, it does lie somewhere between the line of metaphor and reality, and I don't know exactly where that line is drawn, so I will just say how things are as of the time of Enderal Nehrim. Asatron is real, and he ruled over the entire continent. The Star People landed from the Star City on Ven and came into conflict with the Eterna, and the Eterna Empire collapsed because of this. They didn't necessarily collapse because of the conflict alone. If a bunch of meteors were falling down the earth with such force that it created an earthquake and cracked the world open, I feel like that alone could be a threat to civilization. This event is known as the Starfall, so after the fall of Asaderon and the Eterna Empire, followed 4,000 years of a Dark Age, and another 4,000 years of the Lightborn ruling the world. During this time, the Lightborn rewrote history so that they are the gods of Ven. The Lightborn are the ones that ended the Dark Age and gained immortality through OP magic. Now, there are a number of events that I have to mention that occurred in the 4,000 years where the Lightborn ruled the world, but I'm trying not to overload people with names because while I was reading this stuff, it's very easy to get confused, and there are a lot of names getting thrown around. So I will talk about the three most important characters that came about during this 4,000 years and explain their backstories as we meet them in-game. And those three characters are Narathsul Aranthiel, Archt the Fallen Archseraph, and Tyr, the ruler and creator. But finally, to close the analysis of this book, I want to state that Sarantha is also real, and as it turns out, she's older than at least several cycles. She knows about them, and she's the messenger of fate. I must confess that I have no clue how this works, and I have no clue what's her actual relationship with Asaderon, even disregarding the retconning. The retconning has nothing to do with this. I have no idea how this fits in the context of Nehrim. So maybe it's a bit faulty, maybe she was the messenger of fate before she married Asatron, and that's why she was so ready to give up everything because of it. I don't know. If someone has thought something better, please leave it in the comments. Under the Lightborn, according to Nehrim, mages are persecuted, and casting magic without the authorization of the Lightborn or working with the Lightborn is illegal. The reason why they ban the use of magic, I think, is explained in another book. Oh, by the way, did I mention that this mod explains a lot of stuff solely through books? Because it does. But in one of those books, called The Tyranny of the Lightborn, it mentions that magic will be the downfall of the Lightborn, while it also gives the rule more authority, and I guess mystique because they have a monopoly over magic. Therefore, wanting magic to be banned for everyone else makes sense. Rebelling against the Lightborn is also illegal, to the great misfortune of Triomar, and the Lightborn have several organizations to enforce their authority. First, there are the local authorities and earthly kingdoms. Then, there is the Order of the Paladins, which no longer exists, for reasons that will be explained later. And then there is the Order of the Seraph, who are basically powerful mage knights, and among them there are the Arch-Seraphs, the leaders of the Seraph ranks, and the Hands of Tyr himself. We will talk more about them later. And this is the point where the game begins, with magic illegal, an underground organization of mages trying to overthrow the Lightborn, and an invitation reaching a forgotten orphan in Tyrin Abbey.
People say that fate always wins, but only because these cynics stick to the rules. If you do something unforeseen, something never done before, against all human belief in predetermination and prevision, if you leave destiny's path in order to escape from it, and if you defy all threats lurking at fate's edge, then it certainly will not prevail. In most cases, the only trigger needed is an inconspicuous, tumbling stone. On the continent of Nehrim, such a stone was set rolling. Whether this was done unknowingly or with intent cannot be said. Yet the avalanche it caused was meant to form this country's legends for a very long time. The first stone, actually nothing more than a tiny pebble, was a dozen sealed letters laid at their recipients' doorsteps, unseen at night. They contained a mysterious invitation to a gathering at an abandoned mine somewhere in a remote corner of Nehrim. Why, and to what purpose, was not mentioned in them. Still, most recipients followed its instructions. Arriving at the gathering, the avalanche was set off.
Nehrim's intro section is approximately an hour long, and it teaches the player basically everything they have to know about the basic mechanics of the game, and a bunch of other things that come up again only like 2 or 3 times throughout the rest of the mod. It is extensive, and it feels like probably half of it could have been chopped off without any real loss to anything. But, and this is gonna be a recurring theme throughout this video, the interior design is amazing. Even so early on, the game rewards you for going the opposite way just to explore. Oh look, some extra gear. Oh look, some gold. Oh look, a book. And this is the tutorial. Apparently, the recipients of those letters from the intro were sent to an abandoned mine in the middle of nowhere, and perhaps due to the influx of people, or maybe because of foul play, the mine collapsed, and it turns out to be infested with trolls.
You are just a coward, just like every last damn stupid troll.
So we, the player character, and another dude that got the same letter as us called Celebro, navigate our way through the mines. He, however, dies early on, and some of the trolls are also invincible, in order to force the player to learn the mechanics of the game. What I will also say is that they try to build up a kind of horror or spooky element around these trolls. It falls flat. The thought did come across my mind that for 2010 standards, this might pass as scary, but then I remember that this is the same year as the original Amnesia came out, so it really doesn't. And after an hour of running away from unkillable trolls, killing unkillable trolls, picking up garbage, placing torches, running down narrow mine shafts, I must say, the only real emotion I felt towards these things is annoyance, which is why I felt all the more better when, towards the end of the tutorial section, a dude showed up and did this.
In the name of magic, I greet you, good friend.
This here man is Merzul. He's the head of an organization called the Order. This order is not to be confused with the Order of the Lightborn that exists in Enderal. This is a completely different order made up of persecuted mages that work in the shadows to undermine the work of the Lightborn. They have an entire backstory which I will explain later, but for now, Merzul informs us that he's the leader of this order, and that this wasn't meant to be a death trap, and as a matter of fact he's devastated that the gathering location turned out to be such a fumble. Yet he says that we have to join the order now, because we know about their existence, and we can be trusted with our knowledge, because there is a war going on between the northern part of Nehrim and Chancellor Baratheon's army, and said army is patrolling the area and persecuting any mages. Baratheon is the de facto ruler of Nehrim. Technically, Nehrim does have its own Lightborn. His name is Irodan, but he died by the hands of Naratsul Aranthiel about 1,000 years ago. Merzul tells us that we have no option but to join the order, and he gives us a fake letter to present to the master of the abbey that we live in. Then we have to get geared up and immediately head for the base of the order, the Mage's Sanctum.
Yes, you are one of those that are gifted. It is a rare gift that you carry within you. Only a few can touch the fabric of the arcane worlds, and even fewer know of their power. We believed that we were safe from the eyes of the Chancellor here. There is hardly a more secluded location in the valley, so it was decided that our meeting place with the gifted would be here. But instead of being able to tell them about their special abilities, we have unknowingly sent them to their deaths. Fate has dealt us a terrible blow. But at least you are still alive. Therefore, I will make you an offer now that you cannot refuse. I offer you membership in our order to learn the art of magic. Please do not refuse. If you do, you will know too much and could endanger the safety of both the order and yourself, if you know what I mean.
So far, things seem pretty straightforward. We go to a mine because a letter told us to, an accident happens, we are the only survivors, a dude shows up, hits us with the classic, "You're a wizard, Harry," and then we have to quit our current life for a new one in bootleg Hogwarts. Outside the mine, there is a bunch of stuff happening. However, none of them are important. Mages fighting with the guards, a rat infestation side quest, and a dude's head got stuck in a helmet. Sounds cool, but it really is just the developers trying to force feed a player the mechanics. When we go back to the abbey and give give the letter to our master, he lets us go, but he tells us to pick up our stuff first, and when we do, we find a map that we drew as a child and have now seemingly forgotten everything about it. I should also note that as you progress through the mod and discover new areas, the game gives you more side quests, so to someone who has played this mod already, it might seem like I'm skipping a bunch of stuff, but I'm just sticking with the main quest for now. The side quests have their own section. When we follow the map, and I'm using the phrase follow liberally because it's hard to follow this thing, and if you're anything like me, you'll just end up googling it, we find an old, unedged blade with the words Maldin, Royal Smith, Stonefield engraved on it. Here, there are two main quests that we can follow. One takes us to the Sanctum, and the other one takes us to explore the childhood of our character. Our main character story isn't as in-depth as that of the main character of Enderal, and it doesn't carry much weight on the main story itself, until the very end at least. And as a matter of fact, after this quest, we won't encounter another quest about the backstory of our character until the very end. So I will talk about this quest first, and then head to the Sanctum. So, in Stonefield Castle, we meet the blacksmith who originally forged the blade, who now asks us to give the blade back, and in return, he will give us information about where it came from. We agree to this offer, and get this dialogue.
Well, it all happened like this. I know that a child had stolen it from me. A fairly small fellow, Pa. He was always sitting over there on the logs, watching me while I was forging. At the time, some soldiers had set up camp in front of the castle. The child had come with them. Well, you know, that was when Terranor just renounced Baratheon and had built his own little realm. Skirmishes were common throughout the countryside, the Middle Realm against the North Realm, and between them, all sorts of mercenaries and adventurers. It was especially bad at the Dead Pass, not far from here. The small village there, Ledur, could tell you the story. They completely burned it down. Almost all residents died. The few survivors met with the other soldiers here. The child was with them. He'd probably lost his parents, poor kid. The rest you know already. He took the dagger and it brewed quite a hassle. The old gentleman Bodenbrook was very, very angry, I can tell you. Compared to him, his little brat is gentle as a kitten. Well, enough of that. Thank you for returning the blade. Here, I'll give you this dagger as a reward. Farewell.
Obviously, the child was the player character when he was young, and yes, for all of you Enderal enthusiasts, Taranok is in fact Korak Taranok, the guy who invaded Enderal midway through the main quest of that game. After Baratheon became the ruler of Nehrim, he initially served as a vassal for him in the north, but given that, as we see in Enderal, he's a power-hungry egotistical maniac, he rebelled against Baratheon, and he set up his own realm in the north, and his troops began fighting against the troops of the Chancellor, and some settlements were caught in the middle of this, one of whom was our main character's old hometown, Ledur. When we go to Ledur, we receive a vision of our childhood during the time that it got sacked. We wake up in our bed and see the village on flames, and then we see hooded figures, seemingly unfazed by this catastrophe, walking towards a basement. So we try to gain access to that basement, and the hatch turns out to be blocked, and the wall to open it requires a pickaxe. Now, Nehrim does this quite a few times throughout the game, where it asks you for something that you can only find in like a merchant shop while you're in the middle of nowhere, so you have to go all the way back to get what you need, and then walk all the way back to the place you need it for. Oh, did I mention that Nehrim doesn't have fast travel? Because Nehrim doesn't have fast travel. Opening the hatch, and we find ourselves in a secret vault, which is overrun by bats and spiders, at the end of which we find the greatest enemy of all civil obedience, paint. So here's what happened here. Near Ledur, there is a bandit's castle with a bandit prince in it, doing the usual bandit things: stealing, smuggling, smiling. When the war broke out, the two sides, Northern Realm and Southern Realm, camped outside Ledur in different sides of the settlement. But given that Ledur was in the middle and was a peaceful settlement, neither side wanted to attack, and with two armies stationed in the bandit prince's realm, that meant that he couldn't do bandit key things, such as participating in Duelist Kingdom and losing to Yuji. So to remedy this, he ordered the use of the secret tunnels below Ledur to spread propaganda on both sides and convince them that Ledur had sided with the other side, in order to cause someone to engage in a first strike, which worked, as we see Northern Realm propaganda within the vault and Southern Realm troops sacking the city, and the outfits of both in the vault. There is also a bunch of German that I can't read here. Oh well. Unsurprisingly, the secret vault is connected to Ledur Castle, which is the home of the Bandit Prince. So now we can go outside, find his castle, kill him, and gain access to his bank account as payback. That's all about the main character's backstory for now. Keep it somewhere in the back of your mind, we will come back to this quest later. And by later, I mean around 2 hours from now. Alright, I gotta come clean. I skipped a large amount of technical and gameplay background behind this game in order to provide some kind of narrative cohesion. But before we get shoehorned into the main quest of the Sanctum, I want to take a step back and talk about that aspect of Nehrim. Gameplay and mechanics. Gameplay. So how is the gameplay of Nehrim? It is so much better than vanilla Oblivion that it is not even comparable. I have seen some people saying that Nehrim is very main quest focused, and from my experience at least, this isn't the case in the slightest. The world almost doesn't even care about the main quest. Around 75% of all the dungeons in this game aren't tied up to any quest at all. This is the case for Enderal as well, but here I found it to be a lot more prevalent. And even when it is, it's usually like a bounty board quest, which you can automatically claim the reward for after completing the dungeon and then interacting with the bounty board afterwards. I have heard it being said that it resembles the Gothic series more than actual Elder Scrolls, and the authors themselves have admitted that they were inspired by Gothic, and it works incredibly well here. First, the basics. You gain XP from killing enemies or completing quests and discovering new locations. As you do these things and explore the world around you, you level up certain abilities, and when you level up, you get to place points in these abilities, with the amount of points these abilities get being determined by how much you increase them while you are leveling. Were you hitting people with the hammer prior to leveling up? Well then, here's some extra points for strength. Were you casting spells? Well, here's some extra points for destruction, and so on and so forth. This helps remedy Oblivion's terrible leveling system, where leveling up is inherently tied to your skills increasing, whereby you have to choose the skills you'll be using and pick them as secondary skills, as to not have them reach their cap before the world reaches its cap, leading to everything out leveling the player by level 12. With Nehrim, if you want to be a berserker, you don't have to choose a mage class. How about that, Todd? That's right. Take this L. Speaking of the world level, forget the days of the world scaling with the level of the player, and say hello to the world not giving a single damn about what level you are. On a surface level, this might seem like a downgrade, but I disagree. It feels very organic. It gives you a clear sense of progression, and the new gear looks amazing. It is also extremely overpowered for any Oblivion standards. We aren't at the point yet where the Enderal magic system is in place, so everything still has Elder Scrolls names, but they did introduce a lot of new spells. Yes, you will end up just using 5 of them, and 2 of them will always be heal and paralysis, but I appreciate it nonetheless. The world itself has a lot more biomes than Oblivion, which isn't that much of an achievement now that I'm saying it out loud, but it is impressive. I don't know what is up with short AI and forests, but there is something there, and I'm too scared to ask at this point, but I'm glad we're left with the outcome. They also seem to have a problem with banks. Anyway, some areas are definitely more developed than others. In the later parts of the game, areas like the Northern Realm and the places around Shiomar feel kinda lacking. Not that it ever stopped me from going there and exploring anyway, because the exploration in this game is the best thing about the game. It is better than Enderal's. And those words don't come out lightly. There's the basic stuff we also see in Enderal, like the collectible symbols and the unique gear for all classes that you get at the end of some dungeons. Furthermore, skill books are also back, and now they have a special alternative just for conjuration. What is also back is walking up to random people on the street and going, "Yo, you sell security classes here?" We also have ice claws that increase inventory space by 1, fire sparks, which increase luck, random quests that pop out of nowhere, and unique bad guys. There is something unique about the dungeons of Nehrim. Maybe it's because the developers were working with limited resources, maybe it's because it's inspired by Gothic, and so it feels out of place, but there is a lot of passive storytelling going on here. I can't possibly fit all these experiences in this video, which is why I made an entire different video, specifically on the silliness of some of these dungeons. But picture this, you walk into a dungeon, you fight only human dudes for the entirety of it, and at the end a demon comes up to you out of nowhere and starts hitting you. Where did it come from? What's going on? I don't know. I will never know. A dungeon is overrun by something called spider springans. Are they a part of the world? Are they connected to magic? Are they gonna be seen in any other dungeon in this game? I don't know, and no. If you were to overanalyze some of the dungeons of Nehrim, it could completely change your perspective on the lore. Vin is a world filled with mystery, and Enderal made that obvious. In a dungeon, there is a statue devoted to an unknown god, Who is he? Who is Ghost Rider Laziel? And why is his gear called the Prophet armor set? I don't know. All I do know is that the paralysis spell did homework during this playthrough. My only problem with the world of Nehrim is that it feels empty. Or more accurately, it feels like it exists around the player. NPCs have nothing to say unless you have a quest with them. Travelers on the road have 3 lines of dialogue, and all 3 of them revolve around the Eterna and how people don't like them. There is no asking anyone for rumors, there are no random encounters. In big cities, there are barely any NPCs besides the guards and the shop merchants. Not to mention that those shop merchants only have store options. So unlike other Elder Scrolls games, I can ask them something like, how's business? Some of them even sleep right next to their shop, as in right next to the shop counter. It is unfortunate, and to an extent you have to understand it because this was made back in 2010 by a team of modders for free, so I can easily give them a pass on this. But it is a shame, because your brain immediately registers every single merchant as the same, and every traveler on the road is ignored as a nothing encounter. The combat is Oblivion combat. Some things have been refined, but refining Oblivion combat is quite like walking up to a local drug addict sleeping on the pavement, putting a pillow under them as they sleep on said pavement intoxicated, and then calling that a job well done. Behold, combat.
The Creator will punish you. Just wait. I'm tougher than I look. You're a damn nothing.
Kite. Block, heavy attack, but only if you're feeling adventurous. If we're being realistic, just sneak attack an enemy with a bow and arrow, then paralysis stun them, then keep beating them until they're dead, and if they get up, just paralysis stun them again. And if you're a mage, none of the above applies to you because you can just melt people anyway. And if everything else fails, please refer to the in case of an emergency, press C option, otherwise known as the staff option. What else is there to say about the mechanics of Nehrim? Oh yeah, no fast travel. Instead, you only have the option to teleport to certain teleportation points using teleportation spells, which require teleportation crystals to be casted. Overall, Nehrim's exploration is rewarding, challenging, fun, and creative. What more do you want? Oh, it is also completely essential, since if you don't break away from the main quest to do it, you can be sure that in one quest you will be doing fine, and in another quest, which takes place exactly one step inside a higher level area, you will be doing not so fine. Alright, back to the main quest then. There is a thin line of comedy about the Sanctum's location. Merzu says that it is hidden and that you need to be careful and make it there quickly, before also saying that you can locate it as it is the biggest structure in the Abbey that oversees the entire Abbey area. Don't worry though, if you still get lost, every single signpost in the forest has instructions on how to find the hidden Sanctum of Mages. The first thing you will notice when arriving at the Sanctum is Fluffy the dog, being casually stuck at the stairs. Please help her up. And then talk to Archmage Vanmiria. She hits you with the classics. Oh, you're so special. Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Oh, and that small genocide of mages we caused by deciding to host a meeting in a collapsing, infested with trolls mine that is located somewhere in Mordor. That could have happened to anyone, literally anyone. What matters, right here and now, is that we're here. And then she gives us our first task. We have to visit the statue of Narathsul Aranthiel in the forest.
You must merely visit the shrine of Narathsul Aranthiel and read the inscription on the base. This man was the creator of the paradigm for which we fight.
How hidden is this sanctum exactly? Wait, something is going on down there, and that wolf seems very interested to find out what it is. So we touch the statue and read this inscription. This is the shrine of Narathsul Aranthiel, a worthy tribute to a once powerful master of the arcane arts. May all who read this inscription remember him for the fire and dedication by which he fought against the enemies of the free world. We owe this man alone much for the freedom of Nehrim. After we touch the statue, we get teleported to an unknown place where a voice talks to us and refers to us as the Shadowborn. This place is filled with lost spirits and ruins everywhere. And after navigating this place for a while, we find ourselves in a place called the Halls of Destiny, where we meet someone the game doesn't tell us exactly who she is yet, but we know this woman as Sarantha, the Messenger of Fate, and the wife of Asatron, ? And I'm putting the question mark there because she doesn't talk about Asatron, as in at all, but she has this to say.
Worlds are perishable. There is a natural imbalance. It's a fact that if everything does not have an opposite, then its structure is fragile. And once it is broken, it ends up here. Your world will not be any different, even if the limited brain of a mortal is not able to fully comprehend something like that. But the question is, what brings about this demise? Most things exist in contrast to something else. Light and darkness, life and death, reality and surrealism. Some things, however, strive to exist without contrasts. They have no counterbalances. The gods are like this. Merzel will tell you more about these gods. Know this. These gods live without any contrasting elements. The imbalance they create will destroy our world. Oh, I forgot one more thing. Just as you should not ask who I am, you should not ask why I have told you this. The imagination of you mortals is far too linear and simple to understand it. Feel yourself honored that you were able to see the ruins of the worlds in your lifetime. We are finished. Just keep my words in mind and you will take your place in destiny.
Back in the super secret Mages Order HQ, when Miria tells us that we passed the test and that we should wait here until midnight for Merzel to come and initiate us into the order.
Very good. There you are. Yes. Punctuality seems to be one of your virtues. You have undertaken the trip to the shrine. In a few moments, you will learn what the man was all about, for whom it was built. Well, before we begin, I need to know under what sign you were born.
Here we get to choose our birth sign, and it feels so good to choose a sign that isn't actually the polar opposite of what I'm going for, so I can level up optimally. We have so many options after all 4 of them. Options such as Der Kriegen, Der Magier, Der Schurge, and Paladin. I think I'll go with him.
Well, the stars are good tonight. Let us take a look.
I don't know what he's talking about, but there isn't a single star on the night sky.
Before I proceed to explain to you what the Order fights for, I would like to ask you something. Do you believe in fate?
Given that we have just seen the Messenger of Fate, I will answer with yes.
Ah, then you have probably already heard of the predestination of the Tel-Maltath, the Shadow God.
Tell me more.
The Tel-Maltath is the shadow-born counterpart of the power that people commonly refer to as the Creator. The common man in the street believes in the Creator as well as 6 other gods. Actually, it is not false because, let me tell you, these powers do exist. The gods are not only in the imagination of the people and the words of the priest, but also in reality. But at the same time, they are worshipped, and that's where the problem begins. The gods in the actual sense of the word are not divine, nor has the Creator ever created anything. Our world was already here before the gods, and yet they dominate both the land and the people on it. What I'm telling you now is the fundamental truth which the Order is based on. The gods are nothing more than mighty mages, also called Lightborn. They are not immortal and cannot perform miracles. They are like you and I, just blessed with the gift to a greater extent than any other. But that alone does not give them the right to rule over the people, don't you think? It is an unfair aristocracy, the preference of a small group of the better off who really have no right to rule over the people. The Order is fighting to ensure that this injustice ends, and that the reign of the world is placed in the hands of those who inhabit it, the people.
So you want the gods dethroned?
That is exactly what we want, and we must find Naratzul Aranthiel, the man on the shrine again, since he has the power to become the Shadow God, the counterpart of the Supreme Lightborn, and can defeat the gods. Know this. Only the Tel-Maltath, the Shadow God, has the power to lead the Order to victory. His coming is written in the so-called predetermination. It is only a matter of time until he arises. It will be Naratzul Aranthiel. If you want to know even more, just ask me.
This is maybe the only time in the game that I can recall where we have the option to ask someone about an extended list of things, so I will take advantage of it. Who are the Eterna?
The Eterna are a magically gifted people who live here in Nehrim. They are, however, clearly in the minority. Usually they are oppressed and despised. For unlike the humans, all Eterna can weave magic. And that, of course, feeds the fires of the malicious envy festering in all human hearts. The Eterna are hanged for crimes they have not committed and are denied work that any person can perform. They are even forbidden to shop at the public markets. But never offend them, for they are a proud people. Once Naratzul Aranthiel, our leader, and an Eterna at that returns, the Eterna will rise up and fight for their cause and their own freedom. Then the people will fear them. You can tell an Eterna by their long ears and bright eyes. You will rarely see one in any case because they live in seclusion and hardly ever emerge.
What about the Kingdom of Kabay?
This is the name of the great northern city. It is the seat of Taranor, the very man who has shunned Chancellor Baratheon's rule and declared independence for himself and his empire. Since then, the city has been under siege and the whole kingdom is devastated. Unfortunately, we of the Order cannot intervene because this is beyond our power and would draw the attention of the Chancellor needlessly upon us.
What about Narathsul Aranthiel?
He is the real leader of the Order, even though he is in prison. We do not know where he is. Otherwise, we would have tried to free him long ago. 1,000 years ago, he killed the Lightborn Erodan, who ruled over Nehrim. But then he was captured by the rest of the gods and was locked in a dungeon. I feel that our time to free him is rapidly approaching its end. We have to find out his whereabouts, so he can resume the fight of the Order.
What about Baratheon?
Chancellor Baratheon resides in Erothin. It is the largest and most splendid city in Nehrim. You can get to it from the Sanctum by taking the North Path. Its landmark is the Great Bell Tower, which Baratheon now soils with his presence. Now you know everything. I'm going back to my study. In the meantime, you can begin your training. General Acorius, the Sword of the Order, will entrust you with some tasks.
Now we have to find General Acorius and perform some tasks for him. But before that, exposition time! An insane amount of the backstory of Nehrim is either given bit by bit through dialogue you get once per chapter, or again, bit by bit in different books. So I'll try to present things here, and give context about them as best as I can. But keep in mind, even now, people still debate a few things about the exact timeline. I also will not dare play with exact dates in favor of presenting an order of events, as many of the dates for these events are either unexistent or highly disputed. So in the Sanctum's Dome Chamber, there are some books explaining the origins of this order. In the Arcane Sanctum and the Order, it mentions that Merzul, Narathsul, and Baratheon, these names become very annoying to say after a while, first tried to overthrow the Lightborn. However, Narathsul was captured after he killed the Lightborn Erodan, Baratheon renounced him shortly thereafter and became the de facto leader of Nehrim, and Merzul founded the Order of the Mages to maintain Narathsul's vision and eventually free his old comrade. Now allow me to say that this book is found in the Mage's Sanctum. It is presumably written by a mage of the Sanctum, and it leaves quite a few things unanswered. A more complete picture of this rebellion is given in a different book, The Paladin's Downfall. It talks about an order of mist paladins that used to serve the Lightborn. We will talk again about this order in like an hour from now, so we'll come back to them later. But for now, I want to focus on this part of the book where the author says the following. I wrote the following report after a talk with Chancellor Baratheon, who was present in the fall of the Order of the Paladins, the fall of the Misty Grey Warriors. The city seemed as if it were born from a nightmare. Swarms of crows covered the sky and circled around the city's towers. Commander Baratheon was knelt in silent prayer in the middle of the plaza in front of Erodan's fort. The fort was engulfed in flames. All the entrances were sealed from within. The only thing Baratheon knew was that the god Erodan and an army of seraphim had set forth for Chiomar to put a stop to the threat coming from the town in recent times. He had not been told the reason why this was necessary. As the commander of the city guard of Erothin, the wars of the gods did not concern him. His duty was to defend the city itself, and he currently seemed to be failing that. Erodan's tower was consumed by flames, and the entrances were sealed from the inside. He did not know what had happened, but heard terrible cries from within. Theodore Aranthiel, commander of the Inquisition, had disappeared along with all his men. Commander Baratheon, what happened? The whole city is in uproar. The tower's fire is surely to be seen all the way from the northern mountains. Surprised, he looked up. Next to him stood a proud figure of a paladin, dressed in his misty grey plated armor. I don't know myself. Call all the guards together. They are all to leave their posts at once and hurry to the fort. Someone, or something, must have made its way into the inside of the tower. Theodore's men should be defending the fort, while Erodan and the Seraphim are at war, but I don't hear or see anything of them. What is going on here, Baratheon? Has Erodan fallen in battle? The strong man tilted his head to the side and looked at him beseechingly. I fear so, soldier. I cannot find any other explanation. Erodan will be able to prevent all this. Perhaps I can give you the answer. A decisive voice thundered throughout the plaza, making all the paladins whirl around. The entry to the fort had opened at that moment, and a man staggered out of the large gate of the bastion. He had taken off his old armor, but Baratheon could still clearly see who it was. "I'm glad to see you, Narazul Aranthiel. What has happened here? Where is your father? And what a sight you are!" The young paladin had approached Aranthiel without hesitation, and was now climbing the steps towards him. Something wasn't right. Why was Aranthiel smiling? "Well, my young friend, today a new era has begun, an era without gods. Iradan is already dead, fallen by my hands, and the tormented people of the Eterna are rising up against their oppressors. Never again will your gods rule over Nehrim." Before the paladin could even answer, Aranthiel beheaded the young man with a brutal swing of his magical sword. Commander Baratheon and his men had completely lost their poise and stared at the decapitated head that was slowly rolled down the steps. The paladin next to Baratheon was the first to avert his gaze and put his sword from his sheath. "Kill him! Aranthiel has betrayed us!" Hundreds of paladins pulled their swords and hastened like a deadly storm of steel towards Aranthiel, who still appeared to be calm. Even before his men could reach the traitor, Baratheon realized that it was useless. It was something in Aranthiel's eyes that was clear to him. Child's play. Aranthiel's voice was but a quiet murmur. Like a sorcerer, he thrusted his hands into the air, and the clouds above them formed themselves into the eye of a storm. The wind grabbed Baratheon's men and slung them across the fort plaza like bags of straw, flinging them against the walls with so much force that red stains could be seen where they hit the stone. Without paying any more attention to the dead, Aranthiel leisurely walked up to the commander of the city guard and smiled. "It would seem I have not made myself positively clear yet." The coldness in his eyes and the burning tower behind him gave Aranthiel quite the ghostly aura as he slowly walked up to the rest of the Order's members. "Well then, Commander Baratheon, would you like to remain alive?" Baratheon's legs were shaking as the piercing gaze fell upon him and looked right into the depths of his soul. Yes, of course." An amused smile crept into Aranthiel's pale lips. "Then so be it. You and your men here shall live. You shall serve me. Kneel down and swear eternal allegiance to me. Narazul Aranthiel." As Baratheon sank to his knees, from the corner of his eye he saw all his men do the same. A battle will be hopeless. How could Aranthiel obtain so much power? "I swear allegiance to you, Master Aranthiel." The oath from dozens of mouths rose up to the darkened sky and became one with the seething chaos. After Aranthiel was captured by the gods, the survivors spread out over the Hall of Vin. Baratheon took over the reign of Erothin, and it is now one of the few survivors of the Order of Paladins, apart from Narazul Aranthiel, who is supposedly still imprisoned somewhere today. This man betrayed the Order of the Gods, killed vast numbers of people, and was therefore sentenced to a lifelong imprisonment by the Council of the Gods. Nobody knows what happened to his father, Theodor Aranthiel, or the rest of his men. They were inside the fort of Erothin as Narazul Aranthiel had appeared there, and were never seen again. It is also unknown how Narazul Aranthiel could conquer the fort alone, or even how he managed to enter Erothin. It is also known that the god Erodan fell in the Battle of Chiomar on the same day in which Narazul Aranthiel also fought. So yeah, now it makes sense why Baratheon wasn't very keen on joining Narazul from the very beginning. By the way, Chiomar, the city that rebelled against the Lightborn and became the stronghold for Narazul and his forces, does exist in-game, and it has been completely razed by the Lightborn, and we will go there eventually. Also, for the sake of clarity, people that have strong magical abilities in this world can easily live up to 1,000 years old with no problem. Hence why all these characters are still kicking around. So this is how the Order of the Mages was founded and how we got here. Don't get me wrong, there are still like a few dozen elephants in the room that we have to talk about, and we will come back to those details later. I also want to mention something else because it's really funny to me. So in the Mage's Sanctum, there is another book called The Tyranny of the Lightborn. It mentions a couple of things like Deer was born without a father, the Lightborn aren't real gods, magic will eventually be their undoing, the gods are predetermined and therefore so is the Shadow God, yada yada yada. But out of nowhere, it hits you with this. Therefore, in this religion, the faith is considered by the poor to be true, by the rich to be false, and by the rulers as useful. And reading it through for the first time, one might be tempted to believe that this has something to do with the nature of faith and its relationship to predestination, but I can absolutely assure you that this is not the case. Someone just really wanted to make it sound cool, as in r/atheism post cool, which is very cool. The mod does this a couple of times. By the end of it, I found myself going, hell yeah. Yeah, I'm down, let's go. The only enlightenment one can get from religion is watching a temple burn at night. What precedes our initiation into the Mage's Order is a series of mostly forgettable quests that showcase at times good mechanics, at other times maybe some good writing, but more often than not, they just display how absurdly overpowered magic is in this game's lore. Firstly, we have to pick up the bits and pieces left by the accident that took place in the gathering that happened in the mines. The first quest involves us saving a slave that could not make it to the gathering because of their involuntary profession. The slave has magical abilities, so we have to go undercover and save her from her imprisonment. Bear this in mind, we have to not use magic, and instead we have to persuade the slave owner to relinquish the slave. To do so, we come up with the following plan. We volunteer ourselves to become a slave and trade ourselves with a slave girl. We will then get captured and be initiated into being a slave by a torture session called the slave's baptism, and then the slave girl we freed will sneak into the torture chamber, which is inside a castle by the way, and kill the torturers, thus freeing us, and then we will both run away together. Have any of you ever heard of pressing shift and walking away? What is more is that everything went exactly according to this plan. The slave girl's name is Kim, and she's an essential character in the story. Here in the laboratory, we also call her XXX Kalyan Jaspar Prototype XXX. Many times, you can call her as a follower, which is good because this game doesn't have companions. But unlike Kalyan Jaspar from Enderal, she has no dialogue outside the quests she's involved in, and she has no quests of her own. In fact, while playing the game, I completely forgot about her until the last few quests where she becomes more directly involved.
Now we can escape out the back way from the fortress. Creo won't notice until we are long gone. He might start looking for me, but he wouldn't dare come into the sanctum.
Alright, remember the whole ritual we just did to free the slave? Well, in the next quest, we have to wipe a dude's memory. The memory we have to wipe is that of a guard that was sent a letter to join the Order of Mages, but did not respond. So now the Order doesn't want to risk the chance of the guard talking to his higher-ups about the whereabouts of the Order. So we have to wipe his memory, then go back to his house, pick up the letter, and get out of there unseen. To which I ask, okay, why didn't we just wipe the memory of the slave owner and his lackeys? To which the developer responds with a simple and precise, shut up. By the way, the name of the guard whose memory we're supposed to wipe is called Riemann. I don't know why I just heard that name, and then I heard Pelano yelling for a moment. We do exactly as the Order of Mages tells us to do, and we wipe the guard's memory, and then we go back to the house to steal the letter, at which point we get this encounter.
What the? What are you looking for in here? Shit. Damn. What do you want from me? Yes, damn it, I know that I shouldn't have been in the house. But the house does not belong to you either. I have stolen nothing. Nothing. Only one letter. Maybe I can squeeze out a little. Oh, damn, what am I talking about?
This is Narel. He's an Eterna living in the sewers of the city of Erothin, along with other outcasts. Of course, him being an Eterna means that the gods would probably execute him on sight, which is why he's hiding here. Why he wanted the letter is never properly explained. Maybe he wanted to follow it himself, maybe he wanted to sell it to someone else. It's never exactly explained, but he's willing to give us the letter in exchange for our silence about his little crime. And he also shows us around his hideout. So we go back to the Order of Mages HQ, deliver the letter, and head for our next mission. The next mission is a bit of a nothing burger. It also has a lot of magic wizardy gobbledygook going on. So apparently there is another arcane sanctum out there that has an arcane connection with our current sanctum. But that connection has been severed because of magical instabilities that are happening right now, which endangers both sanctums, which might cause a magical contamination. TLDR, there is a place like 2 miles from here and the Wi-Fi router doesn't work, meaning that the people there can watch TikTok dances. Please fix it. It is a mechanically impressive quest. You have to rotate between weapons to kill otherwise invincible arcane golems. Nothing important though, so moving on. From here the path breaks a bit to side quests involving the sanctum and the main quest. The 2 side quests are fun, but they are also irrelevant, so I must skim through them so we can get to the moment I dread the most throughout this entire video. In one of the side quests, the Archmage informs us that the sheep of a dude who's been providing meat and wool for the sanctum are dying because of a mysterious reason. We go there and he tells us that the sheep are being poisoned by a woman who lives beneath him. We ask her about it and she says that she's just a medicine student and these are rare plants used to make rare medicine. She says that he's poisoning his own ship to cash an insurance check from the sanctum for failing to protect his ship. We scoop around the farmer's house and find the poison, and then we hit the farmer with the GTA bastard screen. The mage now agrees to work with us in the sanctum. The second quest involves us finding a girl that went missing in the woods. Regularly, I don't care about poor people going missing, but she's the daughter of the mayor of the nearby town, so I'll give her a pass. We find that some things only described as creatures kidnapped her, presumably for creature reasons, and took her to their lair. I'd like to think of myself as a creature, and I look nothing like this. We go there and save her, then the town folks come and save us, and we get a happy ending. I rate this quest a creature out of 10. Alright, time for the confusion to occur. When we talk to Merzul after fixing the second sanctum, he tells us this.
The false divines once possessed magical silver plates. Each plate was magically connected to all the other plates. This enabled the divines to always be in contact with one another, even over vast distances. We can use the plates to locate Aranthiel. There's just one catch. We do not have a silver plate, and a total of only 7 of them were manufactured, one for each of the divine. We know that there was a silver plate in each of the 7 main cities of the former kingdom. The only one in the whole of Nehrim is in Erothin, in the Chancellor's throne room, to be exact. But to go running into the middle of Baratheon's throne room in order to converse with his arch-enemy would be more than foolhardy, unless you desire a quick death.
Well then, what do we do?
Have you heard of the city of Stormwind? It was the capital of Termatral, later called Arctwind, another realm of the gods. But 80 years ago, a huge quake shook the continent. Of course, the quake was not of natural origin. We suspect it was triggered by the same arcane instability we experience here in Nehrim, and was responsible for the energy blockage in the other sanctum. Large parts of Arctwind sank into the ocean, and the capital, Stormwind, fell into ruin. The few survivors of Stormwind then left. The country was depopulated. We should still be able to find the silver plate in the Tower of the Gods located there. This silver plate is most likely the only one attainable for us. I'm not sure if you can simply pick it up and take it, but we could at least contact Aranthiel and ask him where he is being held captive. You and Kim will handle this together. The fact that you succeeded against the arcane golems shows me that you are up to the task.
How do we even go there?
That won't be easy, but nothing is ever easy. In any case, there are no ships from Erothin to Stormwind. The North Realm doesn't have any ports large enough, and we need not even try in the South Realm. However, I have heard of some, well, sailors from Waverrock. They often travel by ship to Arctwind, taking everything from there that seems useful or valuable to them, and then sell it in Nehrim. Well, they are looters, but I'm sure they'll take you with them for an appropriate compensation.
So now, we and Kim, the slave girl from earlier, have to go to Arctwind and access some silver plate to contact Aranthiel. And yes, the silver plates are also found in Enderal. There is some process involved to get to Arctwind. None of it is interesting or important, however. Some pirates said, oh, we would like to take you there, but our captain got kidnapped. We then save the captain and he takes us to Arctwind for free. Arctwind has an entirely different map. Literally, it's massive. A lot of it is unexplorable, but what can be explored and looted paints this picture of a kingdom abandoned to time. Earthquakes plague the place. Trees move as if they were possessed. Barely any buildings are left standing, and those that are, do so only on borrowed time.
Everything's destroyed. I wonder how many people once lived here. And now nobody is left. No one in the whole country. Can you imagine something like this happening to Nehrim too? Unthinkable.
Eventually, we find ourselves in the ruins of Stormwind's tower, Stormwind being the capital of Arctwind. There, we're contacted by a mysterious voice, who is none other than the fallen Arch-Seraph, Arct.
Of course you are wondering who I am. I am known as the Fallen Arch-Seraph, the former war marshal of those who men called their gods. And I'm now despised by those very gods, although I have done so much, sacrificed so much for them.
And here I have to give another disclaimer. The dialogue here is 100% AI generated. It sounds good for what it is, but I listened to the performance in its original German form and it sounded 1,000 times better and more emotional. Shame I don't actually speak German and are too lazy to read subtitles.
Ja, Aranthiel, ich bin es in der Tat. Ich war neugierig, wen diese beiden hier mit der Silberplatte wohl herbeirufen würden. Und als ich sah, dass du es warst, konnte ich mich leider nicht mehr zurückhalten.
Oh, Arct, wie unverhofft, dich hier wiederzusehen.
Deeper into the ruins, we find the silver plates and finally contact Narathsul Aranthiel.
I do not know you, and I do not know how you have done this, but in your coming I hear the footfalls of fate. No matter why you are doing this, it was a brilliant idea. Apart from my guards, you are the first human being that I have gotten to see for over 1,000 years. Tell me, how is Baratheon's war going against the gods? Did he and Ner'zhul won the battle?
Uh-huh. Who's gonna tell him?
What? He ended the war and cowardly retreated to Nehrim so he could satisfy his vain thirst for reigning there? That stupid fool. He swore loyalty to me. I ordered him to continue leading the battle against the gods, and this coward actually dared to defy my orders so soon after I was captured. Insubordinate traitor. Oh, all the things that must have happened in the centuries of my captivity. Gone are the days when humans and Eterna would take up arms together and have the courage to fight against their oppressors. Together. Nehrim seems to have lost the glamour of the past for good. Baratheon, that fool, has betrayed both sides. Well, it seems I have underestimated him. A mistake I do not intend to make again. When I get out of here one day, I will make an example of Baratheon like the world has never seen before. However, he will be alerted now. We are bound together by an oath, and he will notice that someone has contacted me. But tell me, who sent you? Ner'zhul. Please don't say he has betrayed our cause as well.
No, he sent me.
Good. And that is why you are here. You want to know exactly where they are keeping me? Unfortunately, I have no idea where I am. I suspect beneath a lake or under the sea because it's very humid down here. But that won't help in the least. But listen, I will tell you something that can help to free me. These gods have set up a magical barrier around my cell which prevents magic from being cast in here. A precautionary measure, and unfortunately it works. The barrier is maintained by 3 seraphim. If Ner'zhul wants to get me out of here, these seraphim must die so that the protection spell is broken and I can get my strength back. And who? Who is that? Arct, is that you?
Yes, Arenthiel, it is indeed I. I was curious who these two would summon with the silver plate, and when I saw that it was you, I could hold back no longer.
Oh, Arct. This is unexpected, seeing you here again. I heard of a little disaster in your country that you could do nothing about. Not even your oh-so-great army could help you, eh?
Still disappointed that your coup attempt against the gods failed just because of my soldiers? Imprisoned 1,000 years and still full of rage?
It is anger that is keeping me alive down here, and I will get out of here, Arct, so that you can feel it. You have taken everything I loved and treasured away from me. Don't think I have forgotten that.
Oh, you mean the girl? That scurrilous story about Zalara? That naive and simple-minded thing? She was everything that was ever dear to you? How sad for you. But I must correct you. I did not take her from you. You did that all by yourself.
You abnormal son of a whore. I loved Zalara, and she loved me until you convinced her of this nonsense. You turned her against me.
That is wrong.
I would call it a brilliant piece of underhandedness.
You could have had things other mortals could only dream of, but you wanted more, always more. That's why Zalara left you. And of course, you silly fool think that all evil in the world rests upon your pitiful shoulders. You also took her from me. How do you justify that? How do you justify killing her? You alone are to blame for what has become of us. I, the exiled seraph, and you, the broken fighter for the rule of the people.
Only an idiot of your magnitude would call me broken. Power slumbers within me. Anger slumbers within me. And I can guarantee you that I will use both. Enough now. Report to Ner'zhul that I am caught somewhere beneath the earth. And to be released, the seraphim here must be killed. That's the only way. I will close the connection now, so that this vile snake does not make me livid with rage. I hope you will succeed.
Well, as you see, I have appeared in person. I take this opportunity to warn you yet again that Ner'zhul Arenthiel is dangerous. He was imprisoned for good reasons. If he is freed and resumes his war against the gods, well, that would be all right with me. After all, it was these light-born gods that banished me after their battle against Arenthiel. I have no sympathy for them. Arenthiel is powerful, and he could manage to defeat the gods, but beware of him. He has nothing to lose and will do everything he can to succeed. He will stop at nothing. Keep that in your heart. And now get out of my country. I have a feeling that you are urgently needed elsewhere rather than here.
And thus, Ark teleports us back to the Sanctum. This mod sometimes moves with the speed of a snail, and other times it moves with the speed of Sonic the Hedgehog on acid. After this encounter, we get another important event as we teleport back to the Sanctum and find it besieged by Baratheon's forces. They probably found this place by looking at the signs, and they managed to push us and the rest of the Order all the way back to the Sanctum's hall, where Merzul gives us this order.
You are the leader of the Order. Our Order stands for an idea for a righteous reign by the people without interference of the divine in our interests. An idea does not need a leader to continue existing. It lives in all the people who keep it in their heart. Therefore our cause shall not be aborted should I die. Our idea, that of Narathzul Aranthiel, will not die with me.
Go talk to Callisto in the old mountain monastery.
That's exactly whom I mean. Find the mountain monastery in the North Realm and tell Callisto of the events here. We cannot make further plans now, but I know.
Well, well, what have we here? The whole lot in one spot, and all fearing for their lives, as if death himself had just walked through this gate. Oh yes, I am flattered.
So your first betrayal was not enough for you, Baratheon? Wasn't it enough that you abandoned me and our idea after Narathzul Aranthiel was captured?
By no means do I call it betrayal, Merzul, my friend. Foresight, rather. Aranthiel was out of the way, and afterwards we both merely pursued our own goals.
You have, perhaps. I wanted to go on with Aranthiel's idea. I founded this order, and you could think of nothing better to do than to restrict and suppress us.
Silence! Your chutzpah cannot save you now. You, Merzul, you have acted against my order by training new scholars. This is all you're doing, you and your infinite stubbornness.
You talk nonsense. In the end, you are only here because you can't tolerate people being able to use magic in the Sanctum. You want that privilege, all for yourself.
You want to keep anyone who is magically gifted from using their abilities, so no one can be a danger to you.
And you forget that the shadow that you hunt has a striking resemblance to the shadow you cast.
Merzul, good Merzul, never at loss for big words, just like in the past, and still holding on tight to ideals that have long since outlived themselves. You are a dying breed, my friend, and so I have come to the reason why I am here.
How
Stay
dare you?
back! That's enough. If you believe that your forces are superior to mine, then try them, but leave the others here out of it.
A game that runs according to my rules.
No! What have you done?
Throw this vermin into the dungeon. They no longer pose a threat to us.
You see that? You see that right there? That's combat right there. Escaping the prison cell is almost comedically easy. We just skidoodle our way out of there with the one other member of the Order that also survived. We navigate our way through the prison until our friend gets, and I kid you not, stuck in between rocks.
It looks like the journey ends here for me.
Oh, dude, like, don't worry about it. We're OP mages. You can just teleport out of here.
I'll try to detain the guards as long as possible, but I don't want to fool myself or you. It will be over soon.
What are you talking about? We can cast telekinesis spells and restoration spells. Why not just use them? Actually, didn't you teleport both of us before?
It will be over soon. Now it is up to you to tell Callisto of Merzul's death. Please, do...
Oh, sorry, quest pop-up.
Now go. Go, run!
There is clearly enough room for him to get out of there, isn't there? And with this heroic and altruistic sacrifice of a character whose name I can't even remember right now and won't bother checking the footage to find out, we're able to travel through the sewers and escape to the town of Erothin to make our way to Callisto and continue our quest at free Narathzul Aranthiel. Throughout this section from Act 1 to escaping the sewers, I believe you all have accumulated a number of questions, but I can assure you that even after I explain everything, you will still have even more questions. It's not that I haven't done my homework, it's that the homework was a little something like this. If a nail is 2 centimeters thick, how many nails are in the structure that you're in right now? Arkt and Narathzul have a bit of a history between them. Some more than 1,000 years ago, Arkt was the arch-seraph of the Lightborn, and one day, he, Aranthiel, and Zalara, Aranthiel's girlfriend, went on a mission to recover the artifact known as the Soul Flare. The Soul Flare is essential to the story of Nehrim. It is an all-powerful artifact, and it has the ability to kill the Lightborn. It is also the weapon that Narathsul used to kill the Lightborn Iradan about 1,000 years ago. It is also the beacon from Enderal at home, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. From here, there are two accounts of events. Aranthiel says that Ark lied to Zalara about his true character, painting Aranthiel as an ambitious monster, and after that, she and Arkt had an affair. Arkt says that it was Narathsul's egotism and his never-ending ambition that drove her off him. In the end, they found the weapon, they told Narathsul about their relationship, and he killed Zalara out of jealousy. Which one of the two stories do I buy more? Let me be clear about something. In case it hasn't been made obvious at this point, Narathsul Aranthiel is not a good guy. As a matter of fact, he's an egomaniacal, overly ambitious man. He killed everyone around Baratheon, forced everyone to swear an oath to him, despite them doing so only because they are horrified of him. He cursed a bunch of paladins and his father and locked them in a tower, more on that later, and at the end of the day, he was still the one to kill the girl. The best example I can give to explain Aranthiel is a lot like Lenin. Yeah, technically, his idea of freeing the people of Nehrim is good on paper, but if you disagree with him in any way conceivable, then I'm sorry, but you're the problem. You are clearly not one of the people. As a matter of fact, you're the issue here. You are the enemy of the people. Aranthiel is the hero and the savior, and who are you to disagree with the hero? You are clearly the problem here. Need more proof? Well, after he killed Zalara, he wanted to kill Ark too, but he fled us in, and so he orchestrated what I can only describe as conspiracy to commit genocide. In Ark Went, we find a book called Arkt's Punishment, which describes the events that led Arkt to becoming a fallen arch-seraph. And as I read this, bear in mind that this is happening before Arkt fell, and before Narathsul killed Irodan. The dull sound of war bugles told of the downfall of Zarmonar. Aranthiel sat on his warhorse and grimly looked down at the city. Behind him, the flag bearers were shouting out commands. The city lay in a hollow of a valley, so it had been easy to surround it completely. In the center of the city, the dome roof of the temple stood out clearly from the other buildings. It was the house of the goddess, as well as the temple of the creator. The troops are in position. Not even a mouse can now leave the city without us knowing, Commander Baratheon said. A guttural laugh came out of Aranthiel's throat. Only you believe that, Commander. We're fighting against gods here, not against vagrants. Aranthiel anxiously looked to the sky. What do you see, Aranthiel? Baratheon asked, a little frightened. I saw him long ago. He has been following us this whole time. Who was following us? Shouldn't we quickly storm the city then? No, wait here. I'll go alone. Horrified, Commander Baratheon opened his eyes wide. You wanna conquer a city all by yourself? Aranthiel grinned, quite maliciously. Leave it to me, Commander. I do not doubt I could conquer the city by myself, but I just had another idea. At that, he grabbed the reins of his monstrous warhorse and spurred him. Wait for my signal. There is no victory over Tel Amalthad. Narathsul cried and dashed up to the city. Beating its wings gently, the raven landed on the grass in front of the city. He had been watching Aranthiel the whole time. Now was his chance for revenge. With what seemed like a gesture, the raven turned back into its original shape. Arkt grasped the hilt of his sword and stepped through the open gates of Zarmonar into the open streets. The streets were swept empty, just like the gates. Nobody seemed to be here. Although night had fallen, lights were burning in the houses. Ark knew that Aranthiel had ridden into the city alone. He had seen him. There was no better chance for revenge. Revenge on Aranthiel for executing his beloved Zalara. He had to pay for his crimes against her and against humanity. The Arch-Seraph looked around. Nothing. No one to be seen. There were also no dead people or anything that indicated a battle. Cursing quietly, Arkt continued on. Without knowing where to go, he found his way into the center of the city. The great plaza with the massive temple of the creator was empty, as the city itself. Or was it? At that moment, the door of the temple burst open. People stormed towards him. It was the citizens. Their faces were serious and frightened. They began to form a circle around Arkt. In panic, the Arch-Seraph turned around and watched what was happening. What was going on here? One of the figures, whose face was hidden by a hood, pushed his way through the center of the crowd and stopped just a few feet away from Arkt. Then he pulled his hood off. Arkt looked into the icy cold face of Narathsul Aranthiel, standing before him in a monk's robe. I've been expecting you, Arch-Seraph. Aranthiel whispered so gently that none but Arkt could hear him. Now I will test how loyal you are to your gods, how much you are led by your feelings, and how far you are willing to go for them. I am an Arch-Seraph. Nothing you lead into the field can cut me down. Archt shouted so loudly that everyone could hear him. Is that so, O great Arch-Seraphim, citizens of Zarmonar? As I have told you, here we have the leader of the army that has surrounded your city. Arantheo's voice thundered throughout the plaza. Only the gods know why he dared to come here alone, but we will use this traitor as a warning. The crowd booed. Archt's hair stood up on the back of his neck. He clutched the hilt of his sword tightly. What are you playing at, Arantheal? What have you implemented into the minds of these people? Archt's voice became an angry hiss. Go on, Arch-Seraph. Show us how loyal you are to your master. A bitter grin appeared on Arantheal's lips. Go on, show this traitor what it means to tangle the people of the goddess Irlanda. Arantheal pushed his way through the crowds again and disappeared out of Archt's sight. The citizens took up clubs and pitchforks and stood around the surrounded Arch-Seraphim. In despair, Archt looked around. Mere slingers like these people were no threat for him. But then again, they were innocent. They were innocent souls. Arantheal told them a lie and made them believe that he was behind the army that had surrounded the city. They were innocent. Children, women, elders, scrolls. Killing innocents was against every oath, every law he had sworn to abide by. He was the guardian of the world, no executioner. What would the gods say about that? But he could stop Arantheal, here and now, thus avoiding further bloodshed and revenge in Zalara. So Archt had no choice. Incertitude led to destruction, uncertainty to death. He could afford neither of them. He knew what had to be done, at any price. In anger, he grasped the ironclad handle of his two-handed sword tighter. As hundreds of citizens around him came rushing towards him, Archt murmured quietly to himself, "May the gods forgive me for this bloody deed." After a few minutes, all was calm. With a quiet sigh, Archt sank to his knees in exhaustion and leaned on his sword. He was covered in drops of blood. A terrible feeling overcame him. This deed, this slaughter, was burning to his head, his flesh, his soul forever. A tormented cry of pain echoed through the temple of Zarmonar. The Seraphim knelt down on the stony floor and clasped his hands to his chest in prayer. 200 innocent souls, he whispered. This deed he had acted in revenge, sacrificed a whole city to bring Arantheal to the gallows. Behavior that the gods would never approve of. Peals of laughter rang out from behind him. Impressive, very impressive. Arantheal's voice was to be heard. How dare he? You will pay for this. The Arch-Seraphim's voice was dripping with anger as he raised his hands to Arantheal. Arantheal was lifted up a few meters by Archt's magic. The magical threads around him held him like iron cuffs. He wanted to capture Arantheal by himself and bring him to Inodan to put him on trial there. He would have risen an honorable hero who had overthrown the Telemalthat. Now he had to return as a bloodthirsty avenger of Irlanda's people. He would be banished as Arch-Seraphim, he was sure. But that meant that honor had no meaning anymore. Arantheal had to die. Not in Inodan, here and now. He deserved nothing but an agonizing death for what he had done. Then do what you came for, Archt. Bow your anger. Let revenge take over. In haste, Archt grabbed his two-handed sword and shouted, rushed towards Arantheal. But just in that moment, Arantheal casted a counterspell. Archt's blade fell on the ground with a clank, where his body crashed through the wall of the temple with brutal force and landed on a pile of corpses in front of the temple. Deftly, Arantheal climbed through the hole that Archt had made in the wall and stopped in front of the Seraphim laying on the ground. It was raining harder. Now thundering streaks of lightning were striking around them, engulfing the scenario in an uncanny atmosphere. The water had diluted the blood of the dead, and now the entire plaza was stained red. The corners of Arantheal's mouth were twitching with amusement. So predictable. I knew you would come into the city. Look at yourself, Archt. Now you're wading in the blood of those you wanted to save. I told you I would test you to see how far you would go. And that was your test. What did I say? I will test how loyal you are to the gods. Had you shown loyalty, you must not have killed these people. Arantheal crept around the corpses of the ground like a beast of prey. Archt no longer had the strength to get up. His thoughts were as if paralyzed. And now look at what you've done, Archt. You're a murderer, and I despise murderers. If anyone lost a life by my hand, it was always with reason. They were victims of a battle for freedom, for their freedom. They died for something meaningful, for something great. These people died for no reason, Arantheal said, nearly laughing. Yes, your motive was revenge. The people here are only victims of your thirst for revenge. You sent them to their graves because of your revenge. It's your fault. Tyr will never tolerate that. Archt heard a whimper. As terrible as it sounded, he was right. Would Tyr ever forgive him? Haven't you realized it yet? Thirst for revenge only increases your suffering. That was your test, and you failed. Now you must pay the price for having lived for nothing but revenge. Your gods will not give you salvation or forgiveness, and your creator won't either. You thought you could save the world, and you didn't even know what hate was lurking within you. You see, even if you deny it, deep down, we're the same. We are the same, Aranthiel screamed. If that is so, Arct whispered, I will destroy Tyr, and you too. No one can stop me, Aranthiel. What you can do, I can do too. If Tyr casts me out, if you become the Telemathat, I'll become something better. Arct, summoned his remaining strength, changed into the shape of a raven. Suddenly, he felt new power. Power of forbidding wings took him away from the bloody battlefield, against the stormy winds, and only the rambling of the thunderstorm could drown Aranthiel's laughter far below. So yeah, Aranthiel isn't really a great guy. I could see why Zelara could see a few red flags there. You might be thinking, okay, Kotho, what's so difficult to explain then? Everything here seems to fit together pretty nicely. Well, what if I told you that, as far as I see things, there are more than one Arct? See, before Arctwen was called Arctwent, it was called Tirmatral, which leads us to the most complicated book in this entire game, Mystery of Tirmatral Retold. I will read it from chapter 2 onwards, as chapter 1 just explains the nature of the world according to the Lightborn, which is, as we established, wrong, and it's not even needed to understand the rest of the book. Chapter 2, the end of Tirmatral, the banishing of Arct, the Battle of Storm, and the creation of Arctwent. Yet with these endeavors, Tyr also reaped hatred, especially among his seraphim. Among them was one they called Arct. He hated Tyr because he had given his breath to all things, not just the seraphim. Arct tried to overthrow Tyr, but his efforts failed, and after a terrible fight against the seraphim, Arct was struck down. His wings were ripped off, and he was banished to the earth forever, to fulfill his destiny amongst the mortals. But in his rage, Arct created an entire army of shadow warriors, and with the help of a master of necromancy, he shifted the entire kingdom of Termitral with his shadow. Nobody was able to destroy the Dark Army. However, Tyr sent his arch-seraphim, Went, to Earth. He won the trust of a young tribal leader. Together, they were able to unite the nations of Tirmatral and build up an enormous army. The years went by, and Arct's army was gradually pushed further and further back. In the ruins of the town that was once Storm, Arct and Went met each other in battle, from which Went emerged victorious. Arct's body was locked away in the old halls of Enderal. However, Went was weakened so much that he collapsed right there and then. The tribal leader was elected first emperor of the new kingdom that was named Arctwent. Upon the ruins of Storm, the emperor built a mighty city, and upon the place Wen had died, he created a mighty tower for himself. Wen's body was to be brought to the eternal city of Tirat, but on the way there, his body was robbed and defiled by dark creatures. Chapter 3, the preliminary end of the emperor's lineage, the fall of the empire, the tyrant Brutus. Centuries passed. The kingdom blossomed under the rule of the emperor. During this time, there was no conflicts. Many great towns were made in this time. However, as peace was still reigning over the realm, a mysterious cult began to form. This cult strongly believed in the resurrection of Arct and posed a serious threat for the kingdom. When the emperor tried to destroy the cult, his galley was attacked. The entire lineage of the emperors was taken out by intrigues. Only two were able to save themselves. They were twins, and they had been born only a short time beforehand. They were both brought out of the country. Now the former chancellor of Stormwind took over the reign of the realm of man. The realm was broken into several smaller regions. The chancellor was an evil tyrant, and there were rumors that he was the driving force behind the mysterious cult. He had the High Council of Stormwind replaced by one he formed himself. However, the sovereign of the old council, Callisto, once the chancellor's confidant, stood upon his defense. Together with other former confidants, he formed a secret covenant to fight against the tyrant. But the chancellor fought against the covenant with all his might, and Callisto had to leave the town. Before he fled the town, he sealed the Emperor's old tower with a powerful spell. Brutus was unable to break the spell and could not enter the tower anymore. The years passed by. A shadow lay over the land of Arctwent, and rumors arose that Arct had resurrected. Arct supposedly came back during the game Arctwent, the total conversion mod for Morrowind, and during that game, we and Callisto have to find, pause for dramatic effect, black stones that are apparently connected to Arct's powers, and by finding those stones, we weaken Arct. But as it turns out, the Arct we were chasing after was never really Arct. It was Callisto shapeshifting as Arct, who has this to say before we battle him. It was my goal that we meet here. Many of my supporters died by your hand. Let this bloodshed not be in vain. I am weak, and you know it. I do not want to fight you, and I'm asking that you spare me. I brought all this evil only through this country so that you can find out about me. Tyr is the real traitor. He banished me from the realm of the gods because I was the only one who realized his true intentions. Tyr did not want the other gods to learn which goal he pursued. Therefore, he banished me out of the realm of the gods to Earth because I was the only one who knew the truth. Now you're here, and together we can jointly defeat Tyr. We tell him no, and he says this: the time has not yet come. I hear his voice, but they will come, friend. I must kill you, and then we kill him. There is absolutely not a single source, dialogue, or even an address by the developer about how these events correlate with the characters of Nehrim, and also to Enderal if we take into account the Black Stones. This has a good side to it, as well as a bad side at the same time. On the positive side, it allows me to put a game theory logo on the screen and just say whatever unhinged theory I have in my head. But on the negative side, that theory can never truly be either false or true, since we will never know exactly what is going on here. I have concluded the following theory based on the information given to us about the Black Stones during Enderal. Although the mods are different, and it can be argued that we shouldn't be using the information from one mod to conclude something that happens in a different mod, the creators of Enderal could have used any other Horcrux magic item during the big conquests. And Callisto in Nehrim and Callisto in Arctwent look the same and have the same name, so there is at least an attempt at an overarching canon, haphazard as it may be. So I will give my own interpretation of events and explain why I interpret them this way. The Arct in Arctwent the mod is just Callisto, corrupted by the power of the Black Stones. The stones work basically like the Philosopher's Stone. It grants you what you want, but at the cost of something else. They are needed for the beacon of Enderal because they could provide the energy to power it, but that will only happen at the cost of humans being able to properly construct the beacon. If they fail, the beacon will initiate the cleansing. Same with Kalia's father, Jaspar's sister, and
Can you start us a fire now, Daddy? I'm cold. So cold.
some wounds never heal. Callisto wanted to rule over Arctwent after Chancellor Brutus became a tyrant. The stone said yes, but in the process he became increasingly hateful of Tyr for having control of the place, so he kept collecting the stones. But what the stones could not overpower was something called main character powers. It is always stated that the stones talk to people in some way. I don't know if that is literal talking, as in there is something in the stones that talks to them, or if the power of the stones makes them hallucinate. Here, I'm gonna jump a bit forward to the plot of Nehrim and explain something. After one point, Callisto starts acting like the people of Enderal acted when they got possessed with the stones. He becomes erratic, violent, irrational, careless about human lives. Out of nowhere, by the way, I played Nehrim initially without knowing that Callisto was also a character in Arctwent, and I genuinely found myself comparing his attitude with that of the people possessed by the stones, and I didn't even know that he had anything to do with them. So Callisto pretends to be Arct and comes back for the events of Nehrim through OP Blackstone magic, because he really wants to kill the Lightborn at all cost. Okay, but what about the real Arct? The real Arct, as in the Arct we see in Nehrim, seems to me to be an emissary. Hold on, I can explain. In Nehrim, he has been reborn as an idealized version of himself, which is why, and again I am jumping the gun a bit, he is now a shadow god with the ability to kill both the Lightborn and Destiny itself, whom he resents. It is also the reason why now he's easily more powerful than Arathzul, although in the past he had to flee and eventually got bested by him. Furthermore, in the Book of Predestination, Arct is not only predestined to be there, but he is also referred to as the Fallen. If that is not an emissary name, then I don't know what is. So in short, Arct dies, gets reborn by the High Ones in a cave in Enderal. Callisto initially served the Lightborn, but he took the whole overthrow the Tyrant and take control of Arctwent thing a bit too seriously, and now he has become corrupted with the power of the stones. He gets defeated by the main character of Arctwent, and he comes back to help the main character of Nehrim overthrow the gods. Why did Callisto hate the gods? What was Tyr's plan? It is hinted, especially in the later parts of the story of Nehrim, that Tyr knows more about the cycle than any other character in this game. He's trying to prevent the prophecy of him dying, and to that end, he's willing to do anything, presumably because he knows the instability that will ensue after the death of the Lightborn. After the end of Arctwent, someone comes to tell the main character of that game to go talk to Tyr himself. What follows is this cutscene. It's not actually in game, I knew. I just had to translate it from German. Very vague. The figure in red is the main character of Arctwent, and some people theorize that this cutscene shows Deer destroying Arctwent to prevent the rise of the actual Arct, and then he also kills the main character of Arctwent, presumably to keep things hush-hush. Another theory is that he didn't want the power of the stones to spread, or knowledge of what actually occurred in the continent. Are these theories correct? Probably not. Are they wrong? I don't know. Do they help me sleep at night? I think so. To be fair, I don't sleep that much anyway. I usually spend all night digging through trash cans, pretending to be a raccoon-esque creature. Wait, where were we in the actual game? Something about a sewer? So we journey to the monastery to find Callisto. Kim is also here, because Arct said so after teleporting her. We have a quick talk with Callisto, he vents about Merzu being dead, a bunch of soldiers attack the monastery, we beat them, and then he gives us our next task, to go to the Forsaken city, Triomar.
To the south of here lie the ruins of Triomar. When Aranthial prepared for his war against the gods, he kept himself hidden there. The city granted him refuge. The war began. Aranthial was captured by the gods. The divines raised the entire city as an example to any who would dare stand against them. This event confirms once again that our goals and the goals of the Order are righteous. Anyway, in Triomar, there was a large underground library. Everything that took place at that time, any place in the country, was recorded. I am sure there are notes describing Aranthial's whereabouts written before the city was destroyed.
Fun fact, it is a common belief that the Dark Forest is this way because of the anger of the gods for Triomar's betrayal. However, another book, Mystery of the Dark Forest, explains that perhaps the reason for the forest being this way is because some of the mages of Triomar resented the gods after they destroyed their home, so they casted a forbidden ritual in a house somewhere in the Dark Forest. And after scanning through every single corner of both the game and the game's forums, who are 15 years old by the way, I can safely conclude that no such house exists. There is a boss here, but no secret ritual room. A little further down the road, there is another place that heavily references an unknown god, or at least I think it does. I can't exactly tell for sure though. Say, did I mention that this game has a lot of cat content? In another book called The Story of a Prisoner, it mentions about another disaster that happened in the village of our main character, Lador, involving a night where werewolves attacked the settlement and killed everyone there except a single man who was later sentenced to death for killing everyone and was deemed crazy, because it's easier to tell the public that a dude went insane than to publicly acknowledge the existence of mass murdering werewolves that can level an entire village within a single night. The book finishes with the author that took the testimony from the prisoner, stating that he sent 3 mercenaries to investigate the situation, and all 3 of them haven't returned yet. Presumably, they are dead, and that if anyone would like to go on a werewolf killing mission, he lives in the Dead Pass. We go there, and he is already dead, because he was talking shit about Baratheon. Or did he? How do we know that the werewolves didn't kill him and then threw a bunch of pamphlets down before leaving? How do you people know that I'm not a werewolf in disguise?
Camden Gerard Davis.
Why am I mentioning these 2 books? I am mentioning them because 1, I find the stories interesting, and 2, if I have to go combing a 15-year-old game only to be met with a unfinished content signed by the developer, I would like to at least show people my homework. Back to the main quest then. Triomar is huge. It's what those alien ruins from Oblivion should have looked like. A lot of buildings are inaccessible, but the few that are have a lot going on with them, none of which I will discuss in this section, except the one we're actually after. The library of Triomar is expansive. There are a bunch of crystal puzzles you have to go through in order to access the main chamber, and when you do, you get to meet another Arch-Seraphim. This one's name is Asferon.
I am the successor of Arch-Seraph Wend, who was killed in the battle against the traitor Arct. It is now my responsibility to watch over the heretical ruins of this city.
Oh hi there, I would like to access the heretical ruins of this city.
Your presence is not desired. If you disregard the request of an Arch-Seraphim, you will face certain death. Consider your next step carefully.
So we kill this guy to gain access to a bunch of documents that mention that Narathsul is still in Nehrim, though we don't know his exact location, and only Baratheon may know where he is. There are also some hastily scribbled reports here that mention that Arct was the Arch-Seraphim that besieged Triomar during Aranthial's rebellion, and it also mentions that when the army of the Lightborn conquered the city, some people went down below and started their last resort, whatever that means. Oh, and there's also this guy.
Hey, you! You came from up there, didn't you? Oh yeah, I smell the scent of the woods on you, and the smell of a grilled chicken. Man, that really makes me drool. And by the way, well done with that guy there. Who was standing there? 'Cause he wouldn't let me out. I've been here since he came here. That means, well, roughly maybe several hundred years, I guess. Quite a long time, isn't it? You know, I was actually supposed to get the star map from here. Everything was broken, you know, so the dwarves said, Calrador, get the star map from the ruin for us. And at the same time I arrived here, those people came and ruined everything again. And because this guy was standing there, I couldn't leave. So I've simply been sitting here for the last couple of centuries. Yes, that'll be tasty. I can hardly wait. What am I waiting for?
Why did I get an achievement for that? Back to the monastery, the Chancellor's soldiers besiege the place, and Callisto throws us down a well and tells us to go find the dwarves, who know a passage to the surface, and then go to Cabay, which is the biggest city in the Northern Realm, who is at war with Baratheon at the moment, and find a way to break their siege, which in turn will cause them to help us break our siege. If that sounds convoluted, it's because it is. This dungeon crawl from the monastery to the base of the dwarves, aka the Star People, is definitely the part of the mod that drags the most. It took me about an hour straight to make it to their base, but it is also the place where Nehrim shows its ability to make magnificent interior design. Usually, when you comment something about a game, interior design isn't exactly what comes to mind. So here's this montage. This has to be the area where the developers said, screw consistency, we ball. There are vast caverns, halls full of statues of the Star People, skeleton beings, probably from like 10 cycles ago. There is a bestiarium down here, with a minotaur boss in it. There is a section where you blow a horn, which causes an entire army of zombies to swarm the player. It looks as good as something can look when it's made in the Oblivion engine, which isn't saying that much, but I appreciate it nonetheless. But then, you go to the Star People themselves. In the statues, the Star People look like this, but when you meet them in game, they are basically shrinked versions of the High Elves from Oblivion. It is my firm belief that baiting someone with the promise of dwarves and then hitting them with small High Elves should be illegal. And all around, this section has all sorts of layers of weird. When we meet the first dwarf, he turns out to be a conductor for a train that takes the dead to a place called the Unfathomable Depths, so they can be reborn. But when he sees the map the chicken dude gave us back in Triomar, he completely changes the course of his train so we can give the map to the Star People's king. This is such a puzzling section to me. I understand that the entire concept of the Star People taking people to the afterlife was retconned with Enderal, but even with the standards of Nehrim, this never made sense to me. You know what does make sense though? The author for the English AI voices mod did not bother overriding the voices for the Star People in this section. At first, I thought this was weird, maybe even a mistake, and then I heard them talk and said to myself, Oh, I get it. Because when we meet the king, the first thing he says to us is, you wanna go to Cabay, eh? You know, we get all our beer from Cabay. Yes, we drink beer in every festival, and it makes us very happy.
Dort kaufen wir immer unser Bier und mit dem Bier feiern wir lustige Feste. Und Feste bringen Freude. Ach, ich verstehe. Ihr seid ein Freudenbringer.
Oh, Cabay got besieged, you say, which could possibly lead to it falling, leading to the deaths of thousands. Serves them right. They keep increasing the beer prices. But you know, since you brought me the star map, which shows the location of our ancestral home, I might as well take you there. And the eye candy show keeps going, with the Star People showing us their grand plan to escape this planet. A massive starship that, with the help of the map we just gave them, will hopefully take them back home. As a side note about this thing, we learned during Enderal's Apotheosis quest that it did not, in fact, take them home. It did, however, crash on one of Enderal's mountains, where they all died there. But hey, maybe the real Star People's planet was the friends we made along the way. Isn't that right, Kermai?
No,
This isn't happening!
And after another ride in the longest Minecraft minecart ride Oblivion has to offer, we find ourselves in the Northern Realm, right outside Kabay. The following sequence of events involves Korak Taranor, meaning they are all stupid, so I will blaze through them until the part where we get to Narathzul Aranthiel. So Kabay is being besieged by the troops of the Chancellor, and Taranok says that he won't help us until we first help him break the siege. Apparently, there were a bunch of Kabay mage soldiers in the woods outside the city, but Taranok lost contact with them, so now we have to find them and mount a counteroffensive with them. We do that with the help of a captain from Kabay, and with some of the help of our own wizarding skills to find the exact location of the mages. They tried making the battles larger than Oblivion's, which only makes me appreciate that Todd decided to make small battles for Oblivion, because ain't no way you can land a single hit in a scene like this. After that, Taranor just tells us, oh yeah, I actually have no clue where Aranthiel is. Here, have a firework.
So this is the plan. You will go to Erothin. The best and fastest way is with the help of your magic. Keep hidden in the vicinity of the gate to the Regent Tower. I'll give you a kind of crystal that you can make glow. When that happens, it also lights the counterpart to the crystal which is with me. With this, I'll know when you're ready. When my crystal begins to glow, I will arrange to fire the projectile. The impact will cause quite a commotion, as you can well imagine. That's when you must sneak through the gate and find a way onto the roofs of the palace. There you will eventually find a fire escape, through which you can enter the upper level of the tower. You will then have to find Baratheon's bedroom.
There is no shot this goes according to plan, yet it did. Everything went exactly as Taranor said. Baratheon's chamber is certainly interesting. There is a lot of good loot here, but we also have things like a perfume, a letter whereby the Chancellor confesses his affection to his own grandmother, and a puzzle we have to solve in order to access a secret document that says where Aranthiel is. Because no reasonable person would look at something like this and ever think to themselves that this might be suspicious. Why did he even put it here? Why not just burn it? In it, he says that Aranthiel is imprisoned in the Eastern Islands, and he also laments about why the Lightborn didn't just kill him and be done with it. We then go back to Taranor, he gives us the key to the prison, which he had for some reason, and then we're on our way to free Aranthiel. Although I have explained these events in a small amount of time, in-game they drag a lot. It might take like 3 hours from seeing Taranor for the first time to him giving you the key for Aranthiel's prison. And while all of this is happening, the monastery is still under attack, by the way.
However, remember what I said to you in Arctwend. You must dispose of the 3 seraphim who maintain the magic spell. Only then can you advance onto my cell.
So we kill the seraphims through magic, and magic, please don't question it, and we finally, at last, free Narathzul Aranthiel.
You know, I have longed for this moment for 1,000 years, and now I realize that eons would not be enough for me to fully enjoy it. I am overjoyed to see you, and you have really impressed me. And believe me, it's hard to impress me. Mertzul seems wise to have chosen you. Killed. That revolting maggot has killed Mertzul. What have I ever done to him that he disrespects me so? First he betrays our cause. Then he directly attacks the Order. I must take care of this problem, first thing, as soon as I am free of this prison. Baratheon will know that you're here, or at least he'll have an idea. As soon as I set foot on free soil, he will try to eliminate me. Degenerate nitwit. He does not even notice that the hunter is actually the hunted. By the way, if you are keen to learn more about my past, then you can read this book here. I wrote it while I was stuck here. I think it's pretty exciting.
Aranthiel's journal retells a story where he killed someone who bullied him to the point of breaking into his house and carving on Aranthiel's body using a knife. It says that he was overcome with rage and that he let magic so powerful for a child out that the bully died and the rest of his crewmates fled the scene. But because magic was still illegal, his foster mother said that she was the one who casted the spell, and so she was the one to be sentenced to death on the pyre, where, on the day of her execution, the paladins made Aranthiel be the one to set her on fire. It kinda shows us the seed of Aranthiel's narcissism and his hatred for the gods, but not much else. After we free him, we are stopped by another arch-seraphim. We kill him too, and then Aranthiel teleports us to Zalara's grave.
This is exactly where I wanted to go. Do you know what this place is? Here, in this very place, lie the bones of my beloved Zalara. No matter what that fool Arct said in Stormwind, he alone is responsible for causing her to die. My Zalara. At one time I sought for the Lightborn, this unjust, privileged pack of rogues, an artifact called Soul Flayer. Yes, you heard right. I was once subject to the Divine, just like my father. I served them, and because they desired the Soul Flayer, I set out to find it. Zalara came with me, but the Lightborn trust no one entirely who doesn't belong to their canting, illustrious society, which is why we were accompanied by the former Arch-Seraph Arct. Arct, who presumed to flirt with Zalara, just like a mangy cur who desires a creature of most noble nature. When we finally found the sword Soulflayer and I held it in my hands, this bounder told me what I already knew and had to witness, and Zalara clung to him, this scum, until wrath took control of me and I raised the blade against my beloved. I wanted to punish Arct too, but like a coward he fled. You know, it may sound strange. Sometimes you hate the most those whom you love the most, since they are the only ones who can truly hurt you. Oh, I greatly loved Zalara, and if that love turns into pain, then that pain quickly flares up into a blazing hatred. You cannot understand this. If one sacrifices himself for those whom he loves, then it can only lead to hating those for whom he has sacrificed himself. I've made many mistakes in my life, but to punish my love was the greatest of them all. She was the only woman I truly loved, and I caused her death. Too late I realized what I had done. Too late did I regret. Endlessly. Bitterly. Since then, Zalara's soul has been bound to that sword. Today I am sure it still lies where I dropped it those many years ago, when my rage was finally spent, and I became painfully conscious of the awful thing I had done. No matter, we must recover the Soul Flayer. It is essential to complete our plans. The blade was forged by the first Shadow God, the first Telmaltath, and a part of his soul is still trapped inside. Ancient forces flow through its cold steel. This is also the reason why the gods wanted to have the sword. They are afraid of it. The Soul Flayer is the tool of the Telmaltath, who will one day have the honor of bringing the Lightborn to an end. I will be their end. I will fulfill the predestination of the Telmaltath. The blade lies not far from here. Oh, I've long desired to wield it once again, and become one in spirit with my love, in order to make amends for what I have done to her.
I know this might seem emotional, but I can assure you that this is the guy who killed her in the first place. He's also the guy who caused Arc to fall, and he also killed everyone around Baratheon, thus forcing him to join him under the threat of being executed. Speaking of whom, the Chancellor's mages ambush us. He then tells Baratheon where he can stick it, and then he teleports us to the location of the Soul Flayer, the weapon that can kill the Lightborn. As a polite reminder, I would like to remind everyone that both Kabay and the monastery are still under siege, and nothing is preventing us from first releasing the sieges and then taking the Soul Flayer. But I digress. The dungeon we have to go through with Narathzul to get the Soul Flayer, he hit the Soul Flayer in a dungeon by the way, is probably the most mechanically impressive thing that I have ever played in the Oblivion engine. We have to split with Aranthiel, and each one has to do different things to progress to the next stage until we gain access to the chamber the Soul Flayer is in. Activities include Crystal Puzzle Thing, Poisonous Gas Chamber, whereby the other person has to find a way to deactivate the poison, walking a certain way to avoid getting insta-killed by special wizard traps. A boss fight, where one person has to aggro the boss, and the other person has to light the boss on fire. And of course, who can forget musical chairs? And when we find the Soul Flayer, Arct pays us a visit.
Well, Narathzul Aranthiel, are you gathering the fragments of your past?
Arct, I had hoped never to see you again.
I just wanted to refresh your memory of me since the conversation between the girl next to you and myself that we had in Arctwend had to end so abruptly. And of course I am curious whether or not you will fulfill what you have begun. The fact that the aristocracy of the Lightborn is ending is in my interest too.
Fine. Then move your highly dignified bottom somewhere else and let me take the sword.
Sure, I can actually move my bottom freely. Yours, however, destiny may still not be finished with yours.
Wretched chatterbox.
Now let me tell ya, that right there is good writing. So we teleport to the monastery, and yes, that was an option from the start, lift the siege through OP magic, walk up to Callisto and tell him, hey, look what I found. It's your favorite narcissist. And here is where Nehrim's magic problem shows its colors in the most comedic way imaginable. The first thing that Aranthio says after we free the monastery is, okay, now we have to go to Kabay and free them as well. And he tops that off by saying, to the horses.
Enough of the chatter now. We must head for Kabet, to the horses.
We have been teleporting all over the place for the past hour now, and now that there's an active siege going on, nah fam, we're horsing around. It's like, Peter, the horse is here. I crashed at least 5 times whilst trying to horse ride to Kabay. Just a reminder of what playing this game is actually like. When we go to Kabay, we kill a bunch of people, a bunch of other people club at us for killing the other people, and in the end, Taranor even gives us our own castle. What? Did you expect some kind of depth attached to the lifting of a siege? These things are relatively straightforward. The castle he gives us is nice, and it's also a good base for the player character. It even has a statue of the player character as of the time of completing this quest. Okay, time for the big moment, the siege of Erothin and the death of the Chancellor. When we get outside Erothin, again on horseback, we find Kim, who has started a revolt by convincing the local farmers to join our cause. And now, the Order of Mages, the farmers' wives, the farmers' children, the farmers' side hoes, and the Eternal we found during that one quest from the Sanctum questline all combine our forces and launch an assault on the city, but only we and Aranthio venture into the palace to kill Baratheon. There's supposed to be a chase in here, but we can't interact with Baratheon in any way, so we're left having to hear him talk with Aranthio whilst we sit back and watch.
Look at my kingdom. All this is now in the hands of someone who believes he is the last hope of humanity. What a fool he is! Blinded!
A fool? Ouch, that hurts just a little bit.
Whatever happens, Aranthio, I have done the right thing in turning away from you. You will fail again, just like before.
The last, the worst, the emptiest of moments. The poor man wishes to keep hold of it. In this moment, with all his happiness gone, surrounded by his nightmares incarnated demons.
You will not kill me. I'd rather do so myself.
The clock stands still.
You won't get me.
Stand still, as midnight, silent.
You will not get me.
The hand falls. He falls. It is finished.
I have found my new notification sound.
Baratheon has fallen, literally. Now the Thorn of the Order is no more a hindrance. From now on we can completely devote ourselves to our real goal, the end of the reign of the Lightborn. Let's go down. There is something very special that I need.
Oh, now he teleports us.
Now that I can concentrate fully on fulfilling the predestination of the Telemaltath, I need something that will help me. I speak of the predestination itself, the written record to be exact. I do not actually require this transcript to understand what I already know. I sufficiently understand the conditions to become a shadow god. However, I lack in my knowledge a crucial building block, the keystone, which is inserted at the last, upon which in the end, everything rests. You and Kim will retrieve the transcript. I myself ordered it taken out of the library of Triomar and put into a fortress, after I had managed to kill the Lightborn Eredin. I called the paladins of the army of the Lightborn who stood in my way back from the underworld and ordered them to guard the transcript. They still linger there. They cannot distinguish between friend and foe. Their whole existence is merely circling around one objective: to stop everything and everyone attempting to remove the script. When I told them this, I did not expect the text to ever be needed again. During my captivity, though, I have learned about certain things. Things about which I must get a certainty. But I digress. The fortress lies in the far north of Nehrim. Previously, these deluded paladins used it to worship their creator. It is quite a ways off. If you'd like, I can set you and Kim in the vicinity.
Aranthiel really be the kind of dude to kill an entire legion, then raise them again as undead puppets to protect a document he wasn't even sure he needed, and then look at himself in the mirror every morning and go, yeah, I'm the good guy here. Now we know what happened to the Grey Mist Paladins, and when we go to the castle, we have to defeat them by first weakening them and then releasing them with a spell. And inside the palace, we find a familiar voice talking to us.
On blood and ashes shall he build the rule of man, exalted and free. The work that is created shall be kept in glory until the true ruler takes his toll.
Yes, the true ruler was the High Ones, and yes, that voice belonged to Teolor Aranthiel. The document he was talking to us about was the predestination of the Telimaltath.
What? This is the father of Narathsul Aranthiel?
My son, you have locked me up in here. Release me. This is my temple, my place, my doom. And you, fate is not on your side. You have no right to invade my realm.
He seems to believe that his son is the Shadow God, and after we find him, he goes, wait, you're not my son, and then he just spawns a bunch of zombies and leaves. The predestination reads as follows: upon threats of the simple lab of the world, not a high caste unclean, in blood, a god of the shadow, Telemaltath awake. To create a balance, his existence is justified. His goal to defeat the Most High will be creating a balance for the good of all, disregarding the victims. Their value is low. Not for evil he will argue, not too good he will yield. There are two brothers, their hands are reaching, a shadow and a light, neither in opposition. On blood and ashes he will build the rule of man, sublime and free. The work, complete, received splendid, until the true ruler's calls, toll. One is still needed to achieve the goal. Fallen is the helper called. Although trickery and cunning failed, the world healing will be his betrayal. Such a storm in the battle of the latest dispute, conjuring a storm that will destroy. And Telemaltath, Shadow Messenger, sole purpose. Telemaltath is just another word for Shadow God, but every now and again, the game likes throwing magic sounding words at the player, for no reason.
And now let us leave just as quickly as possible from this terrible place. I will cast a spell.
Oh, I got an achievement for meeting Teolor in Nehrim. How lovely. Oops, I crashed. I didn't think we would make it out of here. My file even got corrupted. It took a lot of begging and crying to make it past this point. Our next task is to start a revolution.
I have a challenging task for Callisto, Kim, and you. It is about the South Realm, the last thorn in my flesh. A few decades ago down there, the temple built a god dominion. And since then, the country is completely sealed off from Nehrim. If I am the shadow god that will end the rule of the Lightborn, the temple in the South Realm will declare war on us, and Nehrim will again be torn in two. This regime must therefore end. I'm not talking about an invasion, no. I want that the people to rise against the temple and force it to its knees.
We, Callisto and Kim, have to infiltrate the Southern Realm, called Ostian, who are under the rule of an organization known as the Creator's Temple. The temple has implemented a theocracy over the realm, leading to social unrest and political violence. We have to go there and ignite a revolution, so that they don't prove an issue to us should we go on with our plan of killing the Lightborn. So we make our journey to the border, present a bunch of fake documents to the border guard, and make our way to Ostian for the 4th chapter of Nehrim. Oh, and by the way, this is the place the main character of Enderal comes from, and the Creator's Temple is in fact the organization that supposedly killed the character's family. I would just like to imagine that as we are walking through the streets of Ostian, somewhere out there, but not too far away, in a little hut, a father is asking his son for a nice crisp piece of meat.
Bring me a nice crisp piece of meat! 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 Bring me a nice crisp piece of meat!
After this point, the game focuses a lot more on the main quest, the events of which happen a lot faster now, with little to no pause until the end of chapter 5, which is why I want to talk about the side quests that I deem important or interesting. In Erothin, there is an old man called Gervasius. This guy is like the gatekeeper for all things fun in the realm of side content. The mod doesn't have any guilds or overarching side quests, besides bounty bots, a few random world encounters, and the odd NPC walking up to you in the middle of the street going, "Psst. Psst, wanna play LA Noire for 30 minutes? But like, in Oblivion?" When we first talk to him, he says this:
I will quickly explain what it is all about. Back to the beginning. We need to go far back. In time, I mean. A very, very long time ago on Vin, the name of our world, a war was waged between the Star People and the Eterna. Both nations were not originally from this world, but fought here. The Eterna had the advantage of magic, yet the Star People prevailed. I want to know how they not only survived against the Eterna, but actually defeated them against all the odds. There is a place in the North Realm known as the Nautilus Yard. The Star People built their fleet there at one time. Your mission is to travel there and find out how the Eterna were defeated. While you are there, you should also try to find a blueprint for the Nautilus ships.
The Nautilus world is expansive, filled with ships and mines that the Star People use to collect their materials and make their ships. We find the plans for the Nautilus and learn the secret of the Star People, which is... Come on, come on, come on! The masses need an answer! Sometimes the real plans for the Nautilus are the friends we made. You know what? Never mind. Sometimes the real plans for the Nautilus are the fumes we huffed along the way. Although we cannot read it, we can read the two letters right next to it. The first one, simply called Node, reads, "Life's happiness lasts just a moment. The most tender of joys dies like the butterfly, who, hanging on the flower, decayed. We hardly feel it. Relish it. Life's short dream. Only in unfortunate suffering will our heartbreak become, in one anxious hour, eternal."
What value had pleasure if it was there in abundance? Why live if there was no death? All of these thoughts loomed above them like a blanket of black clouds.
And so it was that she finally saw her mistake. Man was not made for eternal bliss. Only when enjoyed in brief moments would he appreciate it, contrasted with the heartaches of his brief life.
See that? See that right there? This is what you do to people. The other note is called Side Report. It mentions collateral damage, distraction, and a Nexus crystal. Nothing more though. It must have been a good time. We return to Gervanius, and he has this to say.
It says here they cast a star on Vin to defeat the Eterna. Interesting. Sounds very much like a grossly exaggerated legend, but who knows? Perhaps the shape of the Fold Valley had something to do with it. I will research further if I have time to do so. At the moment I have something more important and you can help me again. You have proven that you have a nifty little hand. Let me explain just a little. In the North Realm there once was a royal race, which was subordinate to the former god Eridan. You know, that god who earlier ruled over all Nehrim and then suddenly disappeared. Curious thing. Let's move on. The paladins of the Creator were Eridan's elite warriors, strictly speaking the warriors of the Northern Kings. This means that all the paladin leaders belong to the royal family. I want to know if any of the heirs of the royal family still live among us. There was a royal lineage recorded on stone tablets. While you were gone, I have hired some people to find these tablets.
There is a crater in the Southern Realm where they apparently threw an entire star at the Eterna. So we have to find 3 plaques to reveal what happened to the royal family of Triomar after, of course, Arctenirodan blew the place up. In the annex storage of Triomar, we find the first plaque, along with the knowledge that the second one can only be obtained by flying above Triomar with a glider. Behold, a glider ride happening in real time in the Oblivion engine. We find the second plaque on top of the mountain base, and then we go to the Northern Realm to find the third plaque. Here we have to find the excavation team, or at least what's left of them, and take the third plaque from a dead dude's body, floating in lava. Then we go back to the old man, and he says this.
Ah yes, the signs are written in Old Eternic language. The last registered heritage is translated literally, Tila the Great Will. But that was over 1,000 years ago. I fear our chances of reconstructing the royal lineage is lost. The royal family probably disappeared with Eridan. A pity, don't you think? Incidentally, while you were searching, I examined the old Star People's battle plans closer and found out something amazing. The Star People had access to the halls to the Nexus in Triomar. They must have worked with people from Triomar. The combination is red, green, blue, blue, orange, yellow. Note that. Previously, the halls of the Nexus were locked, you know, since Triomar was destroyed and no one knew the combination. These halls were once the shrine of the mages in Triomar. There they researched the magic arts. You don't want to actually think about it, do you?
I don't know what we have to get by learning that Tielor and Arathzul are part of the royal family of Triomar, but now we know it. Remember the letter from the Library of Chiomar saying to go underground for the final option? Well, here is where we learn what that final option is. In the Nexus, we must first kill Archmage Naridus. And by the way, this place is swimming full of bosses and easily some of the best loot in the game. So if you're gonna come here with an empty inventory. After we kill him, we have to solve the color puzzle and then delve deeper into the Nexus. There is a sequence afterwards where we have to release a bunch of Arch-Seraphim ghosts and undead acolytes to fight each other. I didn't figure that out and ended up fighting them separately, which costed me about half an hour of my life. Deeper yet, we find another revived Archmage and a bunch of Eternal Gardeners. They were planting something here. I guess they had to grow something to eat. Then we fight another Archmage and gain access to one of the best melee weapons in this entire game, Major Slayer, my beloved. After we kill it, we gain access to something called the Planetarium. Look at it. Beautiful, serene, majestic. I can barely get more than 20 frames per second here. In this place, we have the option to kill the sun, or at least a version of the sun that was made by the Eterna for studying purposes. Past the sun, there is an astrologist who has spent his entire lifetime here studying the stars so he can send the Eterna back to their home planets, using what I think is star people technology and poison gas. His research report reads, we could identify the star signatures and the earlier position of the planet Waram, what was the former home of the star people and was thrown on Ven to defeat the Eterna. We have also created a replica of Waram with magical energy in our planetarium. The result was a miniature replica of what Waram was, as he was eons ago in the sky. Through the observatory in the planetarium, I discovered that the planets were moved from the gravity, as the star people changed the foundations of Waram. That means the planets were thrown off course by mistake and slowly but steadily drifted to our world. I have calculated the rate of the planet and found that it could come in about 1,000 years to a collision when the planets are not distracted. This section has probably been retconned, but I like it nonetheless, so I thought I should mention it. You see this helmet? Right here? Keep this helmet in mind for later. Outside this room, we can find an assassin trying to take us out. Perhaps now we know too much. Then we have to kill the last Archmage and then make our way out of this place. And that was the Nexus of Chiomar. There are a lot of other smaller quests in Nehrim. Some of the bounty quests even have continued plots between them. I once walked up a mountain and found a skeleton of a huge dragon before me, and then a place called Dragon's Lair. I found no actual dragon in that place, only something called Dragon Lord. But then I remembered that this game was in fact made by Germans, and that this was actually just one huge reference to a real-life lolcow. There's also a secret place called the Shore AI facility. There are a bunch of Easter eggs in the rooms related to the main developers. Wait, what's this? What demon is this? Alright developer, you think you're so smart? I am smarter. I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's a lot to see in Nehrim, and I have thrown us off the main plot long enough. In case you're interested in seeing some of the other side activities, here, I made a whole nother video. Not that this is the last time I will cut the main story to talk about something only vaguely connected to it, but for now, let's return to Ostian. Remember what I said in the Act 1 section of the video that after one point, Callisto begins to resemble someone possessed by the Black Stones? Well, this is that section. When we make it outside Ostian, we meet a person that is sympathetic to our cause and gives us a place to stay while we're here. And here's where Callisto's madness comes in, because the gods of Ostian come to question us about why we're gathering outside the city at a place where it is forbidden to do so. And yes, the gods are dressed like assassins from Assassin's Creed, and the girl that helps us just says, oh, I can deal with them, I have fake documents, I can just shrug them off. But then, this happens.
We are members of the temple and have the right to be outside of the town.
Damn it all, just attack already.
You'll never be to battle, men.
What was that? Why did you do that? She could have shaken off the soldiers.
How dare you criticize me?
But now the temple will find out. These soldiers are dead. Do you think nobody will notice?
I do not need to be lectured by a greenhorn.
And Nikki, she died for no reason.
Nikki has done her duty for the order. Now be silent. I do not want to hear another word. I'm going to the house at the port.
And there he goes, free of guilt and with only an arrow in his elbow. Hello, this is Kotho. I have a confession to make about Nehrim's Chapter 4. Chapter 4 is mechanically impressive, but story-wise, it sucks. I don't know how the ball was dropped this low, but oh boy, it sure did. It has its moments, but overall, it's not worth a half an hour narration. So here is a 2-paragraph long summary from this point onward, up until the final quest of this chapter. So the plan to start a revolution isn't to make connections to build an underground organization or to show the people the weakness of their government. The big plan is to blow up a statue that somehow symbolizes the current regime's authority.
It's just a statue. How can breaking a statue cause a revolution?
It is primarily a symbol. It stands for the temple. And if enough people with true intention are behind it, the demolition of a statue, the blowing up of a symbol, can change an entire country.
To do so, we have to weaken the soldiers that guard the statue by infiltrating their headquarters and poisoning their food. By the way, we make the poison in their own headquarters while sneaking past guards. Apparently, the poison's ingredients can only be found there, which kinda sounds like bad writing to me, but I will let this pass because this was a fun section. After we put the poison in their food, we get caught and have to escape using the underground passage. Where have I heard of this before? Thrice. The guards, however, still eat the meal and get poisoned anyway. Hey Bob, how was guard duty today? Good for the most part, Phil. I caught 3 mages doing something in our food though. They made it out, but at least they didn't get anyone killed. 3 mages in the kitchen? Whoa, thank the Lightborn you caught them. I sure wouldn't want to eat whatever they were brewing in there. At least we found out in time so we can throw the food away. What do you mean throw the food away? When we try to escape the cave, we're eaten by a giant underground worm because Dune and reasons, and we escape by tickling his uvula. After we make it back to the others, we have to contact an explosion expert. I wish I could get a job like that. The plan is for the explosion expert to plant explosives in the statue in a manner that is discreet and effective. When we find this person, they are about to blow themselves up by their own explosives, so we help them, and in return, they help us blow up the statue. By the way, throughout the entire process, Callisto is acting very erratically.
I'm fed up with this. See you get this mess sorted out by yourself.
And now he's out. So apparently, poisoning the guards was not enough. So we have to master all our sneaking skills and infiltrate a galleon to throw cannonballs in the city to distract the rest of them. Wait, if that was an option, why not just aim the cannons at the statue? As a matter of fact, why can't we just blow up the statue with magic? The Lightborn used to blow up entire cities. Shut up. This plan is flawless. Just remember, discreet and sneaky. This is the most discreet and sneaky I have ever been in my entire life. And we did it. We sparked the revolution. Somehow this worked.
Haha, that is right. Correct. And more. Yes, haha.
We go inside the caverns and prepare until the revolution begins for good.
I think that's Jagal, the High Priest.
Do not fear for your life, for on the one hand it's worthless anyway, compared to the glory of the Creator, and on the other, I will spare it as long as possible, so you can enjoy the torture for longer. Enough! To the dungeon with them.
Not without my word.
It's Callisto.
Die, you blind fool.
No, Callisto!
Oh no, Callisto is dead, and in such a cinematic way as well. So we kill the High Priest too, and the revolution officially begins. We take control of the temple, Kim has second thoughts about killing the Lightborn, and I crash again.
Just do not know whether it is right. I mean, what we have done here. I just don't know. We have brought the people to rebel against the temple, and so against the gods.
I never had a list of awkward times to receive a moment of clarity, but if I had one, I would imagine that shortly after starting a bloody revolution would be pretty high up on that list. And now here comes Aranthiel to give us the most hard line in this entire mod.
The symbol of the gods is redeemed by the righteous anger of the people. Eliminated. I have always said, the only enlightenment in religion is a burning temple at night.
If you know only one thing about this mod, then it probably is this one line. I just want to say real quick that the religious views of Narathzul Aranthiel are not necessarily the religious views of this channel.
Now it might be clear to the anointed men that the people do not have to be afraid of their government, but the government should be before their people. You have done your job well. Callisto seems to have met a different end, but we can get over that. I tell you, the victory of the Order is imminent. My spies have figured out something that is beyond my wildest dreams. Come with me to Erothin. There we will prepare ourselves for the final blow of justice. As you know, There is no higher power by which these gods seize the rule over Vin and the humanity. They are no more than light magicians gifted in a special way which are not indispensable indeed, but only necessary for the predestination of the Tel Immoltath. Why should we subject ourselves to a small group of elite light mages? I performed the first step by abolishing the Lightborn Eridan, who ruled Nehrim from the world. The rest are to follow now. Their high home of Inadan has become too unsafe for them to hold a common council of all Lightborn because, in the end, I could appear at any time there. Now, instead, they creep away to the ruins of Stormwind. They rest on the hope that one does not search for princes in a cellar hole. In vain. My spies have tracked down them. You must understand that they are prepared there like pigs on the platter for us. I would never have dreamed of being able to get them all at once, and now this appears. Come on. I will create a portal to Arctwend. There we will develop a plan on how to begin an end to the Lightborn. And as soon as Tyr the Creator falls by my hand, I will be the Shadow God and give the people back what they deserve. Come, let's go. Let us get the Creator's head.
No, what are you talking about? I can't.
You can never be protected against betrayers. Let her go. You'll worry about it later.
I guess I'll go with him. Chapter 5 begins here, and now we have to kill the Lightborn. But before we do that, we need to enter Tyr's chamber and take from there the Sword of Goth, as it is the only weapon besides the Soul Flayer that can actually kill the Lightborn. Right next to the weapon, there is a notice made by the people who gave him the sword to begin with, basically saying that they give him the sword because he can keep it safe, which, given the current context, seems a bit unfortunate. Right next to the sword, there is also a book called Shadowborn. Everything this book says is pretty standard with what we know so far, up until the very end, where it directly hints at the High Ones. So, in the core of our world is a chaotic nature. The natural order that the gods lead us to believe in is mere scorn. Our gods are self-proclaimed gods who pose as servants of a higher power, with only the goal of ruling the world. But chaos alone rules over Vin. No god or king ever will. Chaos will. But why should a creator exist without order and meaning? Maybe chaos is only chaos until we realize that there's a higher power. Now that we have the Sword of Goth, we can go back to Aranthiel and start killing the gods. But before we do that, we get another visit from Arct.
What you have just taken there to yourself was the last stone triggering the avalanche. Well, do you still remember me? We met for the first time when you came to Arctwend to talk with Aranthiel. I indulged you, and even now I do not care to stop you from what you are planning. I just hope you know what this weapon carries within itself. While you are wielding the blade of the old King Goth, you also have the opportunity to kill the Lightborn and can thus fulfill the predestination of the Tel Immoltath, which means you could become the Shadow God as well. Oh, did I forget to mention our mutual friend Narathsul Aranthiel certainly knows this? Well, he needs your help because he cannot stand against all the Lightborn by himself. But he is also aware that now he is not the only potential Tel Immoltath, but also you, and he will carefully avoid the possibility that someone else exploits this potential before him. This is my warning to you, and now you may ask yourself why I know so much about the character of a Shadow God. It is quite simple. I, Arct, the ruler of Arctwend, am also a Shadow God. Surprised? Oh, it's very simple. My world is different from yours, and thus its Shadow God is also independent of the Tel Immoltath of this world. And since I'm a Shadow God, I will support the Shadow God of Nehrim in his rise to power. The fact that if it happens to be Narathsul Aranthiel is not my consent, besides there is nothing I can do at the moment. However, you are from a different mold than this tyrant Aranthiel. You know, I have a guess. I believe that Aranthiel is incapable of rising to the Shadow God. Want to know why? I suppose that his father, Tilor Aranthiel, whom you already met as the Paladin in the Northern Fortress, we say he had a more open relation with the Lightborn than his son Narathsul. He worked for the gods, in particular for the Lightborn Irlanda, and who may say how close the two of them got? To make it short, the story of Narathsul Aranthiel's origin is not without gaps. How these gaps are filled in will show itself soon. I'll tell you, if Aranthiel, for any reason, fails in meeting the predestination of the Tel Immoltath entirely, I'll drop him and help you in your ascent. Then you will be the Shadow God.
The whole Shadow God of another world thing he tells us about always sounded a bit shallow to me. I think that Arct himself doesn't realize that he's an emissary and has given himself that role without knowing it. Like how in Enderal, Taylor identifies himself as the Emperor and the player character is called the Prophet. Alright, time to kill some gods. We and Aranthiel march in their hideout, and they come out, one by one, to fight us. First to come is Asara. She's a melee character that uses a lot of magic. She's pretty easy, all things considered, especially if Aranthiel aggros her first. Next we have Saladin. He has a lot of powerful distraction spells, so stay in a corner somewhere until he comes up, and then just double team him. Next comes Morala, who is a Tang, which means that she's the easiest one out of all of them. She can cast lightning, but it doesn't do much damage. And finally, Malphas's Blessing. He is the only one with actual mechanics to go through. You have to deactivate his energy wells, which you can do by slowly walking up to them, sneaking, and taking the energy stones out of them. After you deactivate all the energy wells, you can just kill him like the rest of them, thus crushing the dreams of every citizen of Enderall. Now we have to go inside the ruins and kill the last 2 remaining Lightborn. Except, when we get inside the ruins, this happens.
Stop, Naratzel, I command you.
What right do you have to give me orders? The same right, perhaps, that you used to oppress people like us.
With the right of blood, Naratzel Aranthiel. With the right that was given to me when Teeler Aranthiel, your father, left us.
You are delirious.
With the right as your mother, I gave birth to you, Naratzel. I, a Lightborn.
Nonsense, liar.
Have you never asked yourself why we didn't kill you back then, but imprisoned you under the sea? Why you are so unusually powerful? Why time can't harm you as much as other Eterna?
But no.
You bear the blood of the Lightborn in you, Naratzel Aranthiel. What you have fought has always been a part of yourself.
You are my son, so stop!
Impossible, impossible. No, it cannot be.
You are half Lightborn, Aranthiel. Your fate is sealed.
You freak of filth and fire. Don't dare attack me.
Rest in peace. Your life was hell enough.
I feel like a combination of AI voices, as well as the outdatedness of the Oblivion engine, really takes the weight out of the sin. From this point, we have to take the Soul Player, go back to the Star People's King, we help him with the Giants invasion, and then he will give us a lift to Inodan, the Bastion of the Lightborn, where we will, finally, face off Tyr, the Creator. Here I want to take a minute and talk about something I skipped throughout this mod, because throughout this entire experience I have cut out or ignored a few very important ideas that the characters of this game constantly toy around with. And it's not that they throw an idea every now and again, or maybe you find them written in a book somewhere. No, I'm talking characters like Narathsul and Dir won't shut up about them, and they exist in almost every book that discusses the main themes and the characters of this mod. The ideas of Narathsul and Dir mirror ideas of real life people so closely that sometimes it feels like they ripped the pages of what they wrote down and added them in these two characters. Narathsul Aranthiel screams of John Locke, and Tyr is basically the ruler from Thomas Hobbes' Leviathan. I know. Whenever you see politics on the internet, it has to be accompanied by a schmuck yelling about something they have no idea about. However, I have a degree in politics. It is the greatest shame of my life, but I have it. So, allow me to enlighten you about the ideas of two very famous people in politics who are also completely dead. Both John Locke and Thomas Hobbes lived through an event known as the English Civil War. I'm not gonna get into the details of this conflict. It's interesting, but irrelevant to this class session. Suffice it to say that in the end, the king got beheaded. The English Civil War affected both men's lives, though it is worth mentioning that Hobbes was a lot older than Locke, so he had a more direct experience of the war. Plus, it's also worth saying that Hobbes wrote his stuff a lot earlier than Locke, so much so that Locke knew of Hobbes' writings when he was writing his own stuff. It is also worth mentioning that both of these men were extremely against violence. Hobbes in particular hated violence. So, what did each of them write? Well, first of all, they both agreed that the idea that a ruler has the divine right to rule over his subjects was ludicrous. Hobbes' argument was essentially that humans could not govern themselves. If humans were placed in a state without government, if they were placed in a state before they had an authority above their heads, something Hobbes described as the state of nature, they would eat each other. They would impose their wills onto each other, and only the strongest could win in such a world. As he famously said, life in the state of nature is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short, as humans can do basically whatever they want to do in order to fulfill their desires and preserve themselves. This state works for no one. Even the top 1% of people who can flourish in such an environment have to constantly look over their shoulders in fear of losing everything to someone who will eventually become more powerful than them. So we came together, created governments, and gave them some of our freedoms so that these governments can save us from each other. Therefore, if we humans cannot regulate ourselves, and if the alternative to life under government is barely any life at all, we only have the right to complain or topple the government when it directly threatens our lives. If it raises taxes, wants to rule without public scrutiny, or eliminates any chance for opposition, well, even that is preferable to the brutish human conditions that exist outside of government, and the possible bloodshed of a new revolution. If this sounds familiar, it's because it is. In Nehrim, there is a side quest where we have to find the monuments where the proclamations of Tyr the Creator were written on. These proclamations are exactly how Hobbes views humans, but coming from the mouth of the Leviathan. Tyr curses humanity for their inability to see reason and for requiring force to be tamed. In the last one, it even ends by calling them tainted creatures. I'm just gonna read the first proclamation because it drives the point home pretty well. Once, the Creator's messenger spoke on the marketplace of a city, and people came and listened to his words. However, when his messenger had finished speaking, the people were not in awe of the Creator and his work. They spat at his messenger and threw dirt at him, and so he had to leave the city. He did not return until weeks later, and with him he brought an endless stream of soldiers in silver armor, and these warriors were the gods of the Creator himself. Thereupon, the non-believers realized that they had wronged the messenger, and they catered to him and his warriors with everything they owned. And the next day they swore an oath to the Creator. They were all filled with deep, biting shame that they could never discard. The more or less antithesis of Hobbes' arguments comes in the form of Locke, who disagreed with his views on the state of nature, and instead hypothesized that this state of nature was mostly peaceful, and that by creating governments, people voluntarily forfeited some of their freedoms in order to gain rights and privileges within a society. Governments were made for people, and they are the ones subject to those people. People therefore have the right to overthrow governments that do not work with their best interest in mind, or when they suppress the things that they created the governments for in the first place. Which one of the two was right? Well, let's meet Tyr and ask him. On the way to meet him, we see what has become of the Seraphim. Their bodies litter the streets of Inodan, as Tyr commanded them to stop fighting and save themselves, since as he puts it, there is no use in fighting fate. Some of them couldn't take it, and they decided to end themselves, and others, with endless faith in their god, did not obey by this order, and keep on fighting. We then have to solve a puzzle, and then we meet Tyr, the Creator.
Irlanda has taken her own life. She could not cope with what has happened to her son. Oh, it is a bitter irony that the immortal are not protected against themselves. Now I am the last of the Lightborn, and you stand before me, a blade in your hand which is able to kill me, and with the knowledge that there is no other way of becoming the Telemaltath other than to kill me, which would also give the people what Aranthiel's ideal entitled them to, freedom. But before you perform the fatal blow, I will advise you to consider these things. Indeed, if the Lightborn are no more, the people gain a rule of their own thinking, but consider who will then rule them. The aristocracy of the privileged classes would in fact be replaced by a democracy, or only by the sole person who is able to enforce the most.
This is supposed to be a moment of pondering, but given that we know who took control by the time of Enderall, the answer here seems obvious.
That is exactly what I think. Whenever a power vacuum is created, it is the fastest, most brutal, and most elusive man that fills it again, not the just, tolerant, and temperate man. You must not only ask the question whether a rule is fair. That of the Lightborn was not really, I know. However, you should also ask yourself whether a rule is necessary. And yes, it was, for it was constant. But all right, I will gladly leave the lands of this world to you people. Everyone must part sometime, and now it is time for the Lightborn to go. Kill me, go away and establish a new order, and watch how it fails. You could just as well build an enclave on the ocean floor, sealed off from civilization, and then revel in your imaginary godlessness until you and humanity finally realize that you can only escape from the gods when you yourself take their place. To sum up, you humans are incapable of ruling over yourselves without entrusting the control to a higher power, and you are incapable of freeing yourselves from this higher power, because if you try, you yourselves become this power, and the game begins again. And now you will be faced with a decision. It is of moral nature, and no matter what you decide, you will be neither at advantage nor disadvantage from it. I have to go, and you have to become the Shadow God. Now you have the choice to kill me with this sword, and to contradict everything I have said about the incompetence of humanity. Once I am dead, my power will be transferred to you, and you will become the Telemaltath. The second possibility would be to spare my life and give me the chance to connect with you again. My strength will transfer to you, but my soul will not die. If you choose this way, then you agree with me that people need a higher power in order not to tear themselves apart. Either one or the other, it is your decision, with me or against me, for the people or against them. Strike me down with the sword as I stand here, or take a few steps back to show me that you agree with me. I await your decision, and I'll accept it.
So with all that has been said and done about the state of nature, governments, and who gets to rule, do I agree or disagree with Tyr?
That was a wise action.
Congratulations, you've done it. You are the Telemaltath, the shadow god of Nehrim.
I mean, he was right. He's also a dickhead, but he's right.
I found myself exactly in your situation back then, and it was dangerous. Listen closely. You are the Telemaltath only because everything is striving for balance. The Lightborn bring an imbalance to the world, thus a shadow god rises to remove it. You do see the problem. Everything created in turn deserves to be annihilated. Now that the Lightborn are gone, the shadow god is the weight which presses the balance down. He too must disappear, so that everything is back in balance, in its original position, finally allowing the cycle to start again. The restoration of the balance is carried out by the biggest power which there is in the world. Yes, it is the power which controls the world which is the world. Fate will come and demand your life. However, at that time, just as I received help from a shadow god, I will stand by you in this fight now. The following will happen. In a few minutes, an envoy of fate will appear and ask you to kill yourself. If you do not comply with this, he will attack you. This envoy of fate is mightier than any other thing that the world has ever produced. As I said, it is the world itself. Indeed, one can still defeat it. I am living proof of it. I have already beaten destiny. A single shadow god may not survive against these messengers. Two, on the other hand, have a realistic chance. Both of us together can conquer destiny. Nevertheless, I will leave you for the moment and come again when you need my help. Oh, and by the way, someone has smuggled themselves aboard the starship, although I doubt that this was a good idea.
So now Sarantha, the messenger of fate, is gonna come to try and kill the Shadow God, and we and Arct have to find a way to stop this, and the only way to do so is through the Soul Flayer. But who is the person that smuggled themselves on the ship?
A Shadow God, finally. Oh, are you surprised to hear me? You know that I, carrier of the Soul Flayer, continue to live on in the sword. I am a part of this blade. And rather than just standing around listening to me, you can go back to the city already. As I once told you, the Soul Flayer was forged by the first Telemalthat and was wielded by all the succeeding ones, and they all went into the sword. Now I have the experience and knowledge of all the shadow gods that there ever were. Turn left here. I suddenly knew more than any man or god before, and so I understand what is behind the predestination. It is a lie. It was created, never to be fulfilled. I thought that fulfilling the predestination would end the unjust rule of the Lightborn, but it merely continues the endless struggle between gods and mortals. Usually the gods win, but very rarely, sometimes somehow, someone becomes a shadow god, as you just did. Arct has told you how the prophecy typically unfolds. Fate sends an envoy that kills the new shadow god. Their game with its endless cycle repeats itself. However, if Arct joins you in the fight, together you might kill Fate's envoy. Unfortunately, this would only buy us a temporary reprieve. Fate's envoy would be dead, but destiny and its predestination would remain. You must destroy the predestination itself.
It seems that the dialogue cuts out a bit because of the AI-generated voices. Oopsies. Inside the Council of the Lightborn, we can find some more documents that explain Narathsul's hatred towards the gods. There is his declaration of war against them, a document relating to an event where he chases his dad Tielor into Inodan, and he sees the gods talk in secret for the first time. And there is also another document revealing why Baratheon decided to eliminate the Arcane Sanctum. Turns out, the gods told him to do so. So to kill fate, we must destroy Predestination, which is the document that Tielor was guarding. That book was forged eons ago, and now we have to destroy it. But this cannot be done through regular means. Luckily for us, under Inodan, there is a structure called the Heart of the World. It is a gigantic sanctum where this world, and therefore its fate, has an edge. Within that space exists a weird magical singularity. Thus, different threads of fate can exist, and we will go with that option to be in the fate of our world, which is the Book of Predestination. Think of it kinda like the quest to help Yuslan see his family again. We simply escape the boundaries of our fate to another, which leads to the change of our base fate in the process. After a long descent, we make it to the underground sanctum, and here, Narathsu gives us the greatest foreshadowing about the High Ones and the Veiled Woman in this entire game. As a matter of fact, from this point onward, everyone keeps wondering what happens in the next stages of the cycle. But since it doesn't revolve around them, no one knows, so they keep walking into the same dead end. It also seems that the original plans for what the High Ones should have been is different than the High Ones we got in the end, but we will cross that bridge when we encounter them.
In the end, the life of mortals and immortals is just a game. I do not know why the world was created like this, or if the gods knew of this senseless cycle, or what good it does. Possibly amusing a higher power that lies beyond our imagination, or inspiring us men to do greater deeds than we dare. Even now that I possess all the knowledge of the world, questions are being posed that I don't know the answers to. Why has destiny played so cruelly with us? Look, it ruined my whole life. I killed my lover and made my mother commit suicide because destiny led me to believe that I could be something, achieve something that could never come true. Why couldn't I have just lived like any other human being and been happy? Your life too could certainly have been better, but you are no more than a toy of destiny, like all of us. Our actions can never exceed its mere self-purpose. We are always bound to the rules that were created to make us lose. Now we'll choose the pragmatic solution. We shall not comply to the rules. We won't invent new ones, but we'll play a trick on destiny and destroy the game board. I never liked playing by the rules anyway.
In this place, we also find the diary of the previous Shadow God, and these diaries are pretty important. The Shadowborn who wrote these diaries begins his story just like Arced, with a mind blind for violence and nothing else. It mentions his struggles in some detail, probably to hint at the player that this has been happening over and over again, until we make it to the last entry, which we can find along with the dead body of this Shadow God. This is where the cycle is supposed to end. No one is supposed to make it further than here. What should happen from this point onward is that the Shadow God dies and the events of Enderall begin. The last diary piece of this dead Shadow God reads as follows: I have gotten no further. You feel it? The light, a blindingly bright light, is blocking the way to the sanctum. It spoke to me. Only at that moment, I understood this predestination. It does not necessarily come true. Usually, they do not. It allows one to simply follow the path of the Shadow God. No one has to be Shadow God. Although the predestination says that there will eventually come a Shadow God, it does not specify who it will be. But the man chooses the path that leads him to predestination. The predestination does not choose the man for the path. I would not have to be the Shadow God. Everyone could be. But I have taken the opportunity to do so. I have chosen to continue. Always on. I have destroyed god after god. Why? I could have easily stopped. No one forced me to do so. Someone else could have done it. The life of another would have been destroyed. Why did I become the Telemaltath? Because I could, not because I had to. The light said to me that the Avenger comes and provides for reconciliation in the world. The messenger sets the world back to its original state. Somewhere, Lightborn will be born again, who recognize their talent and eventually will be crowned the kings of the world. From that point, they will again be called gods, and new people will strive to meet the predestination of the Telemaltath. However, this bloodshed must end. Everything must come to an end. This predestination provides an eternal war on all worlds. If you at some time make it as far as I, do not make the same mistakes. Shatter not the face of the world in your pain. The people can do nothing for your mistakes. I hear noises. Destiny's messenger is here. They will exercise their vengeance. The following lines are written in almost illegible, blood-stained paper. They have defeated me. Now forms the world anew. We are here and now, back to the beginning. The cycle closes. Release the world from these chains. This reinforces something that we have known since the end of Enderall. All that is happening isn't happening because it has to happen, rather things like predestination, fate and the High Ones are pushing people to commit certain actions, but whether people commit to those actions or not is their choice. Here we have to take the armor of the previous Shadow God and continue on in an attempt to break the cycle. But here is where it also gets pretty tricky. Remember during the backstory section of this video where we talked about beings known as the Eliaths, those primordial light beings that are the mothers of destiny? Well, one of them is here.
Oh no! Stop at once! That being there is called an Eliath, a light being, the mother of destiny. They were probably always in our world, ever since the creation. It is said they can intervene in the course of destiny. However, this Eliath will not interfere with destiny, for it is there to guard the heart of the world, and it will not let you pass. Don't even think about it. You cannot kill it. No mortal or immortal has ever managed that. Even if you manage to kill its physical image, it will draw energy from its surroundings until it is resurrected again. You cannot withstand that.
Aranthiel's plan here is to hit the Eliath with the soul flare so that its soul gets stuck in it. Then we let the Eliath kill us so our soul also gets stuck in the soul flare. And then we can beat it inside the soul flare. And it works. Why is it always the stupid plans that work perfectly in this mod? And look who we find inside the soul flare.
Now how does it feel to be dead? In the beginning, this feeling was profoundly odious to me. I abhorred the emptiness. I turned from life, until I learned in the end to just accept it and adapt myself into my brave new world. The Soul Flayer carries every living being here that was either bearer of it when they died to those who were wounded by the blade. The sword saves souls, and the soul of the Eliath is here now. You cannot kill the body of the Eliath, thus you had to leave that side of the world. Its soul in the hereafter you can kill. You will encounter its soul here in a physical form, although it's still lifeless. This is because the Eliath still lives in the real world. There's a soul fountain. The water flowing from this fountain has a remarkable magical effect. It may free the souls that are still bound by flesh. If you use this on the body of the Eliath, its soul, its life energy will be within our reach. Once we have released its life energy, you must take it into you. It will almost fly to you, for you have only just died. Your soul yearns to be able to return to its body. The Eliath will die here and never materialize again. On the other hand, you will return with the energy to the world of the living. Well, at least that's my theory. Let us hope that it works and that you didn't have to be killed for nothing.
Alright, I've dodged the obvious question long enough. What's the deal with these swords? Well, as I hinted at earlier, these swords work much like the beacon from Enderall. They have the power to stop the cycle, but they are also needed to fulfill the cycle, which means that it is up to their users to act in a manner that is right once they possess them. The swords, much like the beacon, also suck people's souls in them. In fact, in the Soul Flayer, not just us and Aranthiel are here. Zelara is also here, because Narathsul killed her with a sword, and Aranthiel is still being a crypt to her even after her death.
The Soul Fountain. Do you recognize the figure there? You have seen her grave. I have tried repeatedly to speak with her, but she rejects me. Oh, Zelara.
Erodan, the Lightborn of Nehrim, is also here, imprisoned. In case it wasn't made obvious, Narathsul has turned this place into his own little amusement park. Here we find the Eliath again. We give her magical water, sure, and she does a magical spinny dance. Sure, why not? We then destroy her fragments and return back to the real world. We venture deeper into the heart of the world, and we finally make it to Mordor. But instead of the one true ring, we instead throw a book in there.
Go! Throw the predestination into the maelstrom of this sanctum. Do you see destiny is dying?
And with the Book of Predestination now burnt, we make it to a place that we've been in before, the remnants of all worlds, Sarantha's realm, Fate's Edge. Kim is also here, by the way. Sarantha killed her.
She was a coward, afraid to tell you she loved you. She had many chances. Now destiny has punished her. A pity.
What are you looking so surprised? Did you not expect to land here? Didn't you think that destiny would catch up with you? You and the rest of this order? Oh, how rude of me. I totally forgot to introduce myself. My name is Sarantha, and I am Fate. I control everything.
I am everything, and within myself rests in the strength of everything. Don't look at me pretending you don't understand me. You thought your greatest enemies were the Lightborn gods, yes? You reasoned that with their deaths the fight was finished. You could go back to your castle satisfied. All hail the victorious champion. No, that's mere illusion. I have always been your greatest enemy. You are the last of your little group of rebels whining against destiny. You really think mortals are free to decide for themselves? Only a few dared such thoughts. I punished each one. I executed them all. Just think back. Do you remember your companions? Recall how they died? Merzul, General Icorius, Vanmiria, Narathzul Erenthiel? Oh, and finally Kim. Did you think all their deaths mere coincidences? Oh, no. I killed them all. Every single one of them died by my hand, for each one of them dared to raise their fists against fate. Just like you. And because of this, I will judge you now, as I have recently done with Kim. You will suffer less if you don't resist. No mere shadow god can defeat destiny.
But maybe two can accomplish this.
What the? Who are you?
A free man, and by that your doom, Sarantha, envoy of fate.
Ha! Nonsense. Even you cannot defeat destiny.
Notice how Sarantha has no clue who Arct is, a supposed shadow god, further adding that there is something else behind him, not just shadow god magics and predestination. The fight with Sarantha has a bunch of stages. She was surprisingly difficult, until I realized that they did not give fate itself immunity to paralysis spells, so the fight turned out to be actually pretty easy. And since there is no longer such a thing as predestination, because remember, we burned it, she is no longer unkillable, and we are no longer shadow gods. At some point she makes a copy of the player character and makes us fight it, which I found pretty interesting. Around this room, there are also a bunch of spikes that insta-kill you. They killed me more times than her. As far as I'm concerned, they and their terrible hitboxes are the real final bosses. But eventually, she dies. Oh, that is so nice. We finally gave people free will. I'm so glad for what we accomplished here, and I crashed. I had to fight her again and then save right before Arc teleports us. And after a few more reloads, it finally quit crashing. At least it's more playable than Redguard. Then we find ourselves on Zalara's grave. Arc gives a last monologue about what we succeeded here, and then he finally retires.
I do not know whether her death was predestined or whether it could have been prevented. What I merely know is that from this time, every event, every action, every death, and every birth exclusively will be a result of human action, no predetermination by any higher power. We have both given this to this world, not with swords and magic, but with our free will, with the mightiest weapon which was ever produced by humanity. Be proud of it. I have had enough of big battles and heroic deeds. Look at this view, this sunrise, the beginning of a new era for the people and for us. I will stay here in the hut below the tomb. I would like to live there undetected, unmolested. I would like to remove this armor, yes, even till a field or go on fishing. Of course, you can visit me whenever you choose. Surely you have some questions about your new role as a shadow god. I will be able to give you answers. Soon, when I have found some peace.
And then we get one last cinematic with Aranthiel's closing words. He says he's sorry for using us to become the Shadow God, and after Sarantha was defeated, she appeared in the Soul Layer, but this time, she too has been redeemed. Though what exactly that means is never properly explained. I'm guessing she took a chill pill for once.
Verzeiht mir. Gewiss habt ihr noch Dinge zu tun in dieser Welt. Mich berührt dies nicht mehr. Weder die Welt, noch die Dinge darin. Gehabt euch also wohl, Schattengott.
And that was Nehrim, at Fate's Edge. As always, thank you so much for watching. This is not the end. There is an entire last chapter that paves the way to Enderal. So naturally, we will talk about it now. So we talk to Arct, and he tells us about a place called the Citadel of Shadows. This place is like endgame content galore. There is a tower defense minigame, another dungeon, some really weird magical labyrinth puzzles that give me a headache because of how convoluted and huge they are. There is also a lot of loot here. There is also a sign here that says, oh, you beat the game? Cool, not play Enderal. I should also mention that this entire citadel is pretty difficult to navigate through. I must have missed a couple of stuff, which is a bad thing because the last chapter of Nehrim requires a lot of navigation all throughout this place. In this citadel, there exist 3 stones. The inscriptions on these stones says that these artifacts will allow the Shadow God to unlock his true potential, but to do so, we'll need the 3 stones alongside their crystals to remove the closure stone from the center of the citadel. The hunt for the stones is honestly pretty annoying because of how expansive this place is. Also, if you play this game like me, you've probably been through hundreds of Oblivion dungeons at this point. So for the first part of the final chapter to be the biggest and most confusing Oblivion dungeon is honestly pretty off-putting. Nevertheless, we place the stones that are next to the bigger stone, and we get to go in different locations around Vin to get the crystals. There is a juggler's island, there is a pirate's island, and then there's a place somewhere in the woods. And with all 3 stones and all 3 crystals, we get this in. We are now in an unknown island. It looks beautiful and calm, which is a complete contrast to everything we've been through so far. There is a statue here with a plaque that reads, "Welcome, traveling Shadow God. Now you're in the level of fathoming. Here you'll find 7 elements, giving you the might to find yourself to continue the travel to the center of your past. These 7 elements are scattered freely all throughout this world. You have to collect all of them, and when you do, the path will open up to you. The elements are called elements of courage, and when you collect all of them, when you collect enough courage, one might say, a path opens to your next location. And after traveling the wilderness for a little bit, we find ourselves in a scenic view in a coast somewhat unknown. A hut exists within this place with a journal in it, which is called the Journal of the Survivors. The journal was written by the main character's father, who was taken along with our mother as slaves by the people who burned down our home. However, the ship that was transporting them ended up crashing, and they lived the rest of their lives in this hut, not knowing what happened to their child or what he ended up becoming. Not that they lived for long anyway, because a disease began spreading to their camp and they all died. It seems we were too late. There is also a trapdoor here, the key for which is in our family's tomb. After we pick up this key is where we officially enter the Twilight Zone. Not that the Juggler's Island and the tomb of our parents were normal events, but after this point is where it becomes really strange. Something is physically preventing us from reaching the trapdoor. Skeletons keep rising from the sand and preventing us from accessing the basement. But when we manage to access it, it doesn't actually seem like we entered a different basement. Rather, it seems like we entered a completely different place. But it doesn't stop here, because when we open the next door, we change locations completely and we end up in a Rothin again. But this time, everyone is a zombie and there's only demons and ruined buildings, along with fire and blood everywhere. It feels like a bad dream, like one of those nightmares that you wake up from and recall only how ludicrous it was. And that's because it is. When we beat the Keeper of the Last Barrier, who's a huge demon, our character says this in the Oblivion quest pop-up. I defeated the demon that had taken root in the foreigners district of Erothin. I immediately felt how the world around me began to dwindle away. The vision I was caught in seems to dissolve. Was this really just a test? And then we get this scene. We then wake up in a prison cell with the Sword Flayer and the Sword of Goth being taken away from us. We escape from this prison cell again. This is like 3rd or 4th time we have to escape from a prison cell, and then we start navigating through this place. The people who brought us here are called Soul Keepers. We know damn near nothing about them, and all I can do is speculate based on what this quest gives us. Navigating this structure is a bit of a hurdle. We can't directly assault the Soul Keepers because they're OP, so we have to use hidden pathways in order to progress, until we find enough pieces of their gear lying around and wear them so we can blend in with them and walk freely. And as we navigate through this structure, we find this report. Incidents in recent times. We have felt a fluctuating energy supply in 2 of the saw blades, but it seems increasingly rapid. We will let the council come together. Yesterday night, we noticed another overloading in one of the soul swords. Ma says it is the Soul Flayer fed with the soul of an Eliath. Still not enough, a soul rises up from the blade soon after. This is not good. The swords weren't created to let souls jumping out of their blades. The swords are no longer safe. and they constitute a risk. The council has decided we will search the carrier of the soul blade and take the sword back to us. At least the blades are back to Vin, because we don't feel the presence in this world. By all the souls, what is going on there? The carrier has to be a shadow god. The blades are back to Vin. The watchmen are sent out. The tribe is said, we're waiting for the carrier of the swords in the Citadel of Shadows. When he starts the examination of the shadow gods and is in trance, we will act. Indeed, a shadow god is the owner of the swords. We are dealing with a strong soul here. The shadow god experiences the visions much too fast. We have to change something. The shadow god has awoken from his vision. We couldn't hold him longer. He was banned before he could unfold his full awareness. We won't harm him, but he was caged into the lower vaults of the temple for his own safety. There he has to be as long as we unload the swords at the larger soul stone. At this unloading, the soul which was jumping out of the blade will be destroyed and vanish out of this world. Turns out, these people were responsible for the visions. They waited us to complete the fathoming, and when we were at our most vulnerable, they began throwing obstacles at us, hoping to slow us down so they can get the swords. Our character also says that these guys are the people who created the swords, but Narathzu said that it was the first shadow god who made them. Both ways, it seems like the soul keepers really don't like the cycle, and they want to put an end to it. And to that end, us jumping out of the sword creates a whole lot of issues for them, since now they are in the end of whatever is struck by them, which is what they intended them to be, so they have taken the swords to figure out what is going on with them. And we have to take them back, because if they unload the swords of the souls in them, all of the people inside them will die, including Aranthiel and us. We find the Sword of God pretty easily because it's not a problem sword, but as we try to find the Soul Flayer, we get this note. To the keepers, we've taken the Soul Flayer out of the storage hall and took it to the flower. The unloading of the blade won't occur for the moment. Before we transfer the energy of the sword into the stone, we want to find out what was the reason for the sword to jump out of the sword. If the sword is found faulty by the council afterwards, we'll have to unload it at the Green Soul Stone before we destroy it. This is important. If the sword was destroyed in its current condition, all the captured souls will escape. That would destroy all our plans. The captured souls inside the sword are too valuable and dangerous. So naturally, this gives us the idea to destroy the sword in order to set everyone in there free, including ourselves. They decided to leave the Soul Flayer unattended in this huge, I don't even know what this is. Why did they put the Soul Flayer over here? Clearly someone forgot that this game has telekinesis spells. After we take it back, we're ambushed by the Soul Keepers. It seems that they don't even bother with us. They put no effort in actually stopping us or confronting us or even saying, hey, what are you doing there? They just come in silently, take the sword, and leave us trapped without saying a single word. And we're left trapped here until they break the sword, at which point we and everyone else in there dies, with barely any forces in this entire franchise being powerful enough to save us. That is, unless this happens. This mystical, overpowered creature is simply referred to as the High, and we see only one of it, and it's also transparent. This is a high one. There's also another theory that it's one of those primordial entities that were created alongside the Eliaths and now rests at the bottom of the ocean. But come on now, high one, transparent or powerful entity. I think high one checks out better. Or at least, it seems to be a prototype of what they wanted the high ones to actually look like. This is all we see of them in Nehrim. It killed all the Soul Keepers, and the only thing they left behind are a bunch of zombies and the Soul Flayer. It makes sense why the High One would want to preserve the sword. It is required to kill the gods in every cycle. They are completely fine with humans having it, as long as humans don't use it to break the cycle. Similar to how they wanted humans to find out and construct the beacon, just not actually fire it towards them. The unloading of the Soul Flayer went wrong as well, either because of the High Ones, or because of what we did to it with Narathzul. Now we have the last option of the mod. We can either destroy the Soul Flayer, or we can keep it. If we destroy it, all the souls imprisoned within the Soul Flayer are set free, and if we keep it, we just place it in the Citadel of Shadows until the next cleansing happens, and all the souls are taken out of it, and the cycle begins anew, with some other Shadow God finding it, and some other Lightborn dying to it. Personally, it never sat right with me that Aranthiel never got punished for his crimes. You know, killing everyone who disagreed with him, killing his ex, killing his mom, making an entire order of paladins into zombies, imprisoning his father for 1,000 years, and now he gets to have his own little paradise. So I will bin this sword in the Iron Fire Hall, the place where these weapons were originally made. In the Iron Fire Hall, we also find a book called Soulsmith. It heavily foreshadows the High Ones, again, but again, everyone only knows up until the events of Nehrim, and it closes with pointing out what we already learned by the beacon in Enderal, which is that it's not about the weapon or the machine, rather, it's what we do with them. And with that, Nehrim actually ends for real this time. As I close this video, I want to talk about my overall opinion of Nehrim. A lot of the ideas of Nehrim, story-wise, are basically in their infancy. They aren't fleshed out as much as they are in Enderal. It's not that it doesn't have its moments. Scenes like Tyr's monologue about the nature of humans and the journey our character goes through to fathom himself are great, but they aren't up to par with Enderal, which is fine by me because almost nothing is up to par with Enderal. Nehrim does have amazing exploration and gameplay though, but I can at least appreciate it story-wise as well. And let me tell you why. In Enderal, sometimes you find items of the past that help people of the present progress in their endeavors. I'm talking about things like the room of paintings the father used, the beacon, the word of the dead, and in our head, we usually think of those things as basically plot devices, but Nehrim shows us the origins of how these items are created, and in that regard, it gives a layer of hope to one of the most depressing stories that I have ever played through. See, what it says to me is that even if we fail, even if all we did amounted to nothing, we can still leave something behind to help someone else in the future, and maybe, at some point, several cycles down the line, the collective efforts of the humans of the past adds up, and although the people of the past are now the enemy, their deeds pass on, and they help us break the cycle, and take everyone, including them, out of their misery. If by some miracle you stuck around this long, then thank you for watching. It means the world to me. Remember when I said at some point that I wanted more frequent uploads, and a better schedule with smaller, more consistent videos? Yeah, I remember that too. Oh, how naive of me. Anyway, see you all next month. Should you play Nehrim? Well, if you manage to make it playable, then yes. But the crashes are really off-putting. And I have only spoiled like 90% of the stories in this mod. There are still some bits and pieces out there for the curious few. As for me, I think I like this whole bread tube thing. It's pretty tasty. I think I will stay here for a while longer. And with all that being said, see ya next time. And remember, the only enlightenment one can get from religion is watching a temple burn at night.